Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Icing the puck and moving it forward.
When was the last time you checked if your car and home rates were competitive? CarltonInsurance.net today.
If you are a commercial property manager, property owner, small business owner, or are involved in operations, listen up. Engineer Design Facilities has become the #1 commercial fire alarm service provider in the market. EDF's goal is to not increase your operating budget, but rather decrease it, and at the same time service your business's commercial fire alarm needs with the most experienced and competent technicians this region has to offer.
Make sure your building is up to code. Visit the EDFgroup.com to schedule your systems evaluation today. That's the EDFgroup.com.
More Blues talk, more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
All right, we're back here on 101 ESPN with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. Hopefully everything holds up. Listen, sometimes when you're on remote, Technical issues happen. We apologize for that. We'll do our best to make sure that we're on the air the rest of the day. For some of you, might have been good that we got off the air a little bit early. So we're going to finish our conversation about last night's game between the Blues and the Calgary Flames before we get into Thursday Night Football here in just a moment. Alex, I thought one of the biggest things from last night is just your stars were stars again.
Yeah.
Jordan Kyrou, I thought, played a good game. Robert Thomas looked really good on the ice. Philip Broberg and Colton Parayko were good. And, Jordan, we can go ahead and take down that bed whenever you get a chance. Jordan Deacon back in the studio for us. We're broadcasting live at the EMB Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. Binner was excellent in net for the Blues last night as well. I feel like we have seen now, under Jim Montgomery, one of the biggest changes for them is that they're just getting the contributions from these top-line players, the top pair defensemen. Your number one goalie looks excellent. Their goaltending since Montgomery has taken over has been, I mean, legitimately the best in the NHL.
Yeah, I think that's credit to the defensive play, too. It's keeping things out from the outside so that the goaltender's going to handle
it. And last night I didn't feel that way. Last night it was a credit to Jordan Bennington is freaking amazing when he's on top of his game.
This team will not be a playoff team unless they get the most out of their best players. And I know that sounds like a Captain Obvious statement to make, but I believe this is a playoff roster. And when you've got guys like Dylan Holloway who are putting up points, and Zach Bolduc who's scoring goals, and Jake Neighbors who's leading the team in goals scored, that's all fine and dandy. And you know what? For the future, that makes you warm and cozy talking about the Blues. But in terms of being a competitive roster, you need Robert Thomas to be what he's been in the last 2 games with 5 points in 2 games. You need Jordan Kyrou to remain a point-per-game player and effective every single night. The last 2 games that Pavel Buchnevich has played, he scored a goal. This team will only go as far as their stars take them because those are the pillars of this roster. You know your goaltending is going to keep you in games every single night, regardless if it's 5-4 or 2-0. Your goaltending is going to make you give an opportunity to win. Defensively, they're massively improved. It comes down to your star players on the offensive side being their star players. And frankly, I think that's why they brought in Jim Montgomery. They weren't getting the most out of their best players under Drew Bannister. And in that Road to the Winter Classic conversation, Jim Montgomery is talking to Jordan Kyrou and references, this is how David Pastrnak used to do it. You don't think Jordan Kyrou is going to be like, oh, okay. This guy just coached Pasta. I can do that now. That's where you're at right now with this Blues team. And last night I thought was a perfect example. Your best players were your best players when you needed them to be, but when they weren't, you just found a way to get it to a point that you can win the game.
Broberg, once again, a couple of assists.
Unbelievable.
I hammer it right now. 2 points a player for Holloway and Broberg. 4 total points combined between those two on Saturday against Edmonton. Hammer it.
Broberg now has 12 points in 15 games this season for the St. Louis Blues. 12 points in 15 games. As a defenseman, man, that's ridiculous. Like, what he is doing for them is absolutely insane. So, yeah, your top players were your top players last night. And it sounds like such simplistic analysis, but, dude, when the Blues are at their worst, it's because those guys aren't performing up to expectation. So, good win for them last night, a gritty win for them last night. They needed those 2 points. They were able to get them on the road in Calgary. All right, I wanted to get to football from last night as well. Thursday Night Football playing like right alongside the St. Louis Blues. I was watching both. I had the 2-screen setup. T-Bone was watching neither as he was watching
high school girls basketball.
What was it last night?
College
sorry. College.
Is that the great University of Missouri St. Louis?
UMSL.
The Tritons.
Good game?
Yeah, good game.
Did it live up to the expectations of an overtime winner for the
so
Blues
much better
and a
than watching
34-31 final and Packers versus Lions?
I mean, that women's team at UMSL, 6 wins in a row, 3-0 in conference
play. All right, that's enough.
Yep,
Lions last night get a win against the Packers, and I want to start with the Detroit side of things. They get a win, but they snuck away with this thing, man. They dominated the first half, and then in the second half, they had to hold on for dear life to be able to come away with a victory. We'll talk about the Packers here in a minute. It's a good win for the Lions, no doubt about it. But I feel like the real conversation coming out of that one is Dan Campbell. Because the guy is an absolute maniac. And on 4th down, he's going for it seemingly every time. He goes 4 for 5 on 4th down last night. 4 for 5. And one of those 4th down opportunities, the one they did not convert, was from his own 30-yard line. They end up turning it over on downs, and the Packers end up scoring on the next possession, as you would expect, a touchdown. At the time, they were up 24-21, and there was about a minute and a half to go in the third quarter. T-Bone was not watching live. Otherwise, we would have had a barrage, Alex, of texts explaining why Dan Campbell is the biggest idiot in the NFL. I'm sure of it. I'm certain of this. Do you guys believe that Dan Campbell's aggressiveness will be an asset or a liability for the Lions when they get into the postseason?
I think it's going to be an asset, because in the postseason you have to be bold and you have to take chances, because if you just continue to punt the ball away, you end up wanting more, and you end up asking what if. If you go for it on fourth down in an elimination game and you lose the game, you can't ask what if, because you could sit there and say, hey, we went for it. You know what? We didn't convert. Next time we'll convert. But when you go for it and you pull it off, that's what I think separates the winners versus the losers. So some people might call them just losers and dumb when you're making those bold decisions. I wouldn't be making it on the 30-yard line of my own and giving the ball right back to Green Bay. But I think this is going to be an asset. It failed them last year, but I also feel like that instills confidence in your group, knowing that Dan Campbell believes that they're going to be able to get the ball. They believe that they'll be able to convert on that opportunity, and I think that's what's going to get them to a Super Bowl.
I think it's more of a liability. I think you saw it play out last year in the NFC Championship game, right? You have Detroit that's up 24-10. They have the ball, and they go for a fourth down in that game with all the momentum on their side, and it's an incomplete pass, and they give the bat instead of taking the points, by the way, in that spot, to potentially go up 27-10.
You're saying they had the momentum when they went for it on their own inside of their own 30?
No, not last night. In the game against San Francisco.
Oh, I was like, last night they very much did not have the momentum.
There was no momentum in that one.
But what my point is I think you have to play the game, right, by what you're seeing. And as BK's pointed out multiple times, I did not see the game last night. But I think that there are times where he gets too aggressive on fourth down. And the reason I went back to that NFC Championship game was they had a chance to go up 27-10 in that game at the San Francisco 30. He ends up going for it on fourth down, and we know how the story is, right? Momentum just suddenly flips because San Francisco's turned it with that stop. You have Detroit that fumble on their next possession when they get it, and they end up losing 34-31. I think that I do like some of the aggressive moves that Dan Campbell makes, right? There are times where I think he is smart in going for it on fourth down. Now, from your own 30, even when you don't have momentum, is stupid as hell. But I think that there are times where he reads the room properly, goes for it more than what some coaches are willing to do. I also do think sometimes he is terrible at reading the room and saying, we're just a go for it fourth down team. I think fourth down decisions aren't well, this is our identity. We just go for it. No, you've got to read what the game is at that time and that moment. And I think you saw he didn't do that right last year in the playoffs, and I think he's going to fall victim to it again in the playoffs this year.
I like it because this is our identity, man. Yep. Every player on that team knew exactly what was coming up. Last night, the only people that were surprised when they went for it on that fourth down were Al Michaels and the color analyst last night.
Give him a little grace. Al Michaels is
Yeah, but Kirk Herbstreit was also surprised, like shocked. They thought they were going to go out there and take a timeout. Dude, they just took a timeout. They can't take another one. It is literally against the rules for them to take another timeout here. So they are going for this fourth down, and they were shocked about it on the broadcast. They shouldn't have been, man. This is who Dan Campbell is. And the inside of their own 30, that's super aggressive.
Yeah, that's just dumb.
I liked it because you got a chance to put this game away, and you want your offense to put the game away. You haven't been able to stop the Packers offensively the entirety of the second half. You had no answers for what they were trying to do. So I didn't hate it as much as it seems like everybody else did. But the last one I loved. And it's highly aggressive to go for it in that spot. It was fourth down, and they're trying to find a way to put this game away. And if they kick the field goal there in that spot, there's about 45 seconds left for the Packers to get into field goal range again. And this is the part of the scenario that I don't think enough people are putting together the analysis on. If you kick that field goal and you give the ball back to the Packers and they get back into field goal range, they can tie it up again, man. Or, as we've seen multiple times already this year, they could go down and win the football game. So I liked going for it because you're already tied. And in a worst-case scenario, the likelihood is the Packers just kneel it out to finish out that half, and then they go into overtime, right? So the worst-case scenario there is likely you end up going to overtime. Best-case scenario is I'm winning the football game with my offense on the field, with an offensive line that I trust, a running back in David Montgomery that is here for this reason, that they extended earlier in the season for these exact scenarios, and it worked for him.
Yep.
If it didn't work there, he would have been crushed. People would have absolutely crushed Dan Campbell today, and this is something that I want everybody to keep the same energy on.
No, those people would have been right, and don't you dare say what you're about to.
Be consistent. If you disagree with the way that Dan Campbell manages these games, cool. That's fine. I'll disagree with you, but that's fine. There's a real conversation to be had on the aggressive nature with which Dan Campbell coaches his football team. But if you're going to praise him today for finding a way to win that football game and going for it on that fourth down and doing things the way that he did, operating the way that he did yesterday, you cannot then criticize him in the postseason if it fails. You can't have it both ways. You got to have it either one way or the other, because Campbell knows exactly who he is, his team knows exactly who he is, and I think it's part of the identity of the Detroit Lions in 2023 and 2024 is knowing who you are as a team and how you operate in these big games. They knew last night, dude, we can't win this game with field goals. We can't. We've got to beat this game. We've got to beat this team with touchdowns because their offense is too explosive and Josh Jacobs is too good on the ground. We cannot stop them consistently. It's the way that John Harbaugh operates every time he goes up against the Chiefs. He knows we cannot beat Patrick Mahomes by kicking field goals. It's not going to work. Over time, we will get beat that way. So I like it, but I'm going to be consistent if it does not work out in the postseason. I think this is an asset to the Detroit Lions. I do not think it's a liability.
This was an expectation when you bring in a Dan Campbell, because Dan Campbell just says, bleep it, we're always going for it. And you need to stick with that, because I hate the wishy-washiness of head coaches to where it's like, the analytics tell us not to go for this one, or I don't know. Nope, Dan Campbell says, look, if it's doable for our team and we have the best offense in the NFL, we're going for it. And I love it. I love it. Is it going to jeopardize them at some point? Maybe. They might lose a playoff game because of it. But when they do, I will look at that same situation and say, good for Dan Campbell. The team didn't convert on it, but Dan Campbell said, we are going to try and win this football game.
The other thing that I appreciate about it is that he has a clear worldview. Like, we know who Dan Campbell is as a coach and how he's going to operate in these situations. There are so many coaches, whether it's in college football or in the NFL, that you're thinking to yourself, like, I don't know how they're going to operate here. And I think sometimes that trickles down into the players, where they're wondering, how are we going to operate in these specific situations? The Lions aren't that team, man. And it also informs their decisions on third down as to what they're going to do on fourth. They already have that decision on fourth down made, which means they can operate a little different. If it's 3rd and 1, hey, we can throw here because we know we're going to have another opportunity to run it to get this first down once we get to 4th down in these situations. So it opens up the entire playbook. It changes the way that defenses have to defend them on 3rd down as well. I think ultimately it becomes a good thing. We would also, the inverse is also true here. If you coach every game scared, which we see with your boy Sean McVay,
whoa.
and it's come back to cost him countless times, including in playoff games, where they don't go for it on 4th downs and they settle for all these field goals. Like, I feel like those coaches do not get criticized enough, and then there's just this avalanche of criticism for coaches like Dan Campbell. So I love it. I'm glad we have a coach like this, and I appreciate that he has a worldview.
I bet Dan Campbell's banner about his Super Bowl's flying high. And oh, wait a minute. His 4th down cost him against the San Francisco 49ers in the championship game.
Your team wishes they were as good as the
I don't want to
Lions are
hear
this
it
year.
on Sean
team's
McVay.
going down
Sean
quick.
McVay's a Super Bowl champion. That's right. Super Bowl champion.
One
Congratulations on your all-world defense that got you that Super Bowl. All right, so I do want to talk a little bit about the Packers, because we said heading into last night's game, this is the game where we're going to find out if they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender or not. And there were real questions about that. I've said all year long, I believe in the Packers, but it's almost just like this. It is a belief or a faith as opposed to something like I can see it with evidence that they're a real Super Bowl contender, because even including last night, every time they go up against a contender, they lose. And I still view them as a Super Bowl contender, and never more so than after watching that game last night. I think this team is good enough not only to get to, but to win the Super Bowl this year. How did you guys feel about the Packers coming off of that loss last night on the road in Detroit?
It was the tale of two halves, because the first half, I'm like, yeah, no way. Jordan Love didn't look good. Offense just could not move the ball. And I was thinking, well, their defense is good, and that's about it. But then the second half opened up, and then it's like Green Bay opened up. It was like the floodgates pouring in. I thought Jordan Love was good. I don't know if Jordan Love showed me oh yeah, that's a dude that can carry his team to a Super Bowl. Josh Jacobs is a guy that could carry your team to a Super Bowl, but how often does that happen with a running back that can carry you that far? So I can't deny them keeping that game very competitive, and I think probably making the Lions have to second guess their game plan a little bit, but I would probably put them the third best team in the NFC right now. Do I think they can win a Super Bowl? I think anything can happen in the NFC. I still think the Lions would be my clear-cut number one. Philadelphia Eagles eating a large chunk of that pie, but there's a little slice there that I would probably give to Green Bay after watching how Jacobs and Love moved forward.
Yeah, I would go Lions, Eagles, Packers in that order in terms of the best teams in the NFC, but I think that's the tier.
No Rams there.
Kind of like in the AFC, I think there's a tier of two teams, and I think it's Bills 1, Chiefs 2, and then everybody else you could filter down from there. I think that it's the two teams in the AFC and three teams in the NFC right now that have any chance to get to the Super Bowl.
Here's my question on, should we view them as a Super Bowl contender? I mean, you said the part that I think is most important there of, hey, they haven't beaten those teams.
Yep.
Right? They're in these games, but, that's fine and dandy, but did you win? And I think that maybe this isn't the year that they are the Super Bowl contender. I think maybe this is that first year that is the building block year
Wasn't
to
that
get
last
them
year,
there.
though? Because last year they ended up getting deeper into the postseason than anybody anticipated and then lost a really close game, a game that I think they should have probably won against the San Francisco 49ers. So I felt like that was all right, we're kind of on the cusp of things here. Next year is the year that we continue to build. It might not be a Super Bowl winning season this year, but I think that this should be a season where they're expected to be inside of that contention window.
And maybe that is fair. I still think after last night, I think you have to look at them as still in that second tier, but maybe not a Super Bowl contender.
So you don't think they're in the same category as the Bills, the Chiefs, the
I wouldn't put them there
Lions,
either.
or the Eagles?
I think they got a chance, but I'm not putting them at the top.
I think they need help. I think the Lions and Eagles have to lose in the playoffs, not to the hand of the Packers.
So you think they're closer to the Ravens, Chargers,
because
Bucks?
I mean, you've hung around with these teams, but you're not getting over the top. Right? You're still finding a way to lose the football
And that's
game.
in the regular season. The postseason is a different animal.
And that's why
what I would say is I actually think in the postseason, I would lean towards them. I trust the coach. I trust the quarterback. That's my concern with some of these other teams. I'm not sure that I do trust some of these other teams' coaches or quarterbacks in the postseason. Like the Eagles. I don't know how much I trust their coach and quarterback once we get to the postseason this year. I trust the Packers a lot more. That sounds strange because we've seen them play all season long.
Not there. I trust the coach more. A quarterback, I don't know. But I've seen Sirianni get to a Super Bowl, man. And this is where I brought this up, I think, earlier this week. I do find some of the storytelling around Sirianni of this guy. I mean, he does look like he's lost at an art museum constantly. But I truly don't know how we got to this point. Because, sure, they had a collapse last year. They still won 11 games last year. He got the same quarterback to a Super Bowl 2 years ago and nearly beat the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback of this era right now. So, I don't know. It feels a little unjust, in my opinion, to suddenly just continue to point at Sirianni and go, that's not the guy. Unlike McCarthy, who I could look at and go, yeah, that guy gets blown out in the playoffs every freaking year.
Jerry Jones says he wins.
Some other coaches that have been to the Super Bowl in recent years include Zach Taylor and Todd
Better not say Sean McVay.
No, I think Sean McVay is an excellent head coach. Doug Peterson went to a Super Bowl.
Todd Bowles didn't go to the Super Bowl.
Dan Quinn went to the Super Bowl. I do think sometimes, while getting to the Super Bowl should be a mark on your resume as a head coach, I do think sometimes teams are so overwhelmingly talented that the team overcomes the coach in some scenarios.
That's where I feel the Eagles are now.
I feel like the quarterback's got to be
If you're going to say that, if that's fair. And again, I'm not trying to tell you, I think Sirianni's top 5 coach. I don't think that. I think he's probably more in that top 10, maybe 11, 12 range. But, I mean, he did get to a Super Bowl with a very talented roster.
No
and
doubt.
he's got even – I think there's even a chance you could argue this roster's better than that team he had 2 years ago, if not right in line with him. So can they not carry him to a Super Bowl? I think they probably could.
Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything, sports or otherwise. We'll get into that at 11:45. You guys can check us out on YouTube as well. It is working now. YouTube.com/101ESPN STL. That is where the Graveyard Chat is off and running. You can join John, Keith, Darth, Adam, Taylor.
Darth?
Yeah, Cat Dad
Vader?
Gamer, one of our favorites.
I
over
love
there.
Cat Dad. Shout out, Cat Dad.
Yep. A lot of individuals. Justin over there as well, all chiming in the Graveyard Chat. You can be among them over at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up next, the Cardinals are finally defining exactly what their expectations are for the 2025 season. I think that it is time that we start to discuss this. We'll talk about it next and what it means for their plans this offseason here on BK and Ferrario.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, the Blues took on the Calgary Flames and came away with a 3-2 overtime win, with Colton Parayko scoring that game-winning goal. The Blues are back in action tomorrow night in Edmonton, and you can hear the pregame coverage right here starting at 8 o'clock, and then puck drop is at 9. I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
We're back to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
News pass along for college football before we get to the Cardinals, explaining what their expectations are for 2025. This comes from Pete Thamel of ESPN.com. Missouri right tackle Armand Membu is officially declaring for the NFL draft. He projects as a top 100 player, according to scouts. He had 30 games in his career at Mizzou, allowing just 1 sack and 390 pass block plays this season. He said he's, quote, opting out of Missouri's bowl game as well. He told ESPN that he's ready. Feel like I'm good enough. It's time for me to move on to the next chapter of my career. I'm extremely appreciative to Coach Drinkwitz and the opportunity that he gave me, and Coach Brandon Jones, a Missouri offensive line coach, for helping me understand the game of football and offensive line play, end quote. All of that again from Pete Thamel of ESPN.com. The news, Armand Membu declaring for the NFL draft. Alex, I had been under the impression that he was likely to return next year. Sounds like that has changed, obviously. I'm guessing, hey, you're a little bit more. All of these guys now have agents, the top players in college football at this point. So he probably heard through his agent, hey, you're going to be a top 100 pick, man. If you have the opportunity to do that, it doesn't matter what NIL you make next year. It's not going to exceed what you're able to make at the NFL level. Go now. There's no chance like the present, and go ahead. And he's an unbelievable athlete. It's possible he even sees his stock rise during this process. It's not a great offensive line draft anyways, so Membu's going to go to the NFL. This is a huge loss to Mizzou. There's no way to sugarcoat it. They wanted him back next year. I think they, at least at some points, thought that he was potentially going to be back. They now need 3 at a minimum transfers to come in and start for them next year on the offensive line. So this is a big hit for their team.
Does this guy not care about his team and his family?
Yeah, Illinois.
Like, what are we doing?
See this.
What do we do? Well, that's because they don't have talent to get to the NFL draft.
That's true. But you still wouldn't see it.
So like that opens up. I would imagine. I'm just assuming here that he has NIL money attached to him. That opens up more NIL money available to use. Oh man, this is like giving Eli Drinkwitz like $1 million and saying, go have fun with it, big boy.
Yeah, basically. That's pretty much what it is.
T-bone.
We talked about it yesterday. This is now like the NFL where, hey, when money leaves the books, you have that to be able to spend. So he does have that opportunity. Unfortunately, they're not going to be able to replace him player for player. You're not going to upgrade from what Armand Membu was for you. So now maybe they use that money and go get a number 1 wide receiver. Like you make up for it elsewhere, right? Use that money and go get a star corner. Because if you're not going to have the offensive line the same way that it was last year, you've got to be really good somewhere else. So that's the news from Mizzou. Gabe DeArmond of PowerMizzou.com was on with TMA earlier today, and he did report on the air. So I feel comfortable saying it on our station now. Miller Moss is expected to visit Mizzou next week. It sounds like Mizzou and Louisville will be the 2 schools that are getting the first visits, with Mizzou being the first to be able to get Miller Moss, the former USC, on campus. So USC quarterback on campus, that's a big one. We'll see what ends up coming out of that. Hopefully it's the only visit for Miller Moss. All right, let's get to the Cardinals, not Louisville, St. Louis.
Oh,
nice.
Katie Wu had a great piece earlier today on The Athletic, and this is what, in part, she wrote, Alex. As of now, the focus of the reset for the Cardinals will be to give former top prospects reps and young key players the opportunity to play. Nolan Gorman is someone that the team would like to see get close to 600 at-bats next year. Mozeliak referenced him as a specific example. Seeing what Jordan Walker can do in a full year in the outfield without the looming threat of being sent down to the minors will also be a focus. Figuring out fair expectations for Walker and Gorman, along with Nootbaar, Burleson, Pages, and Herrera, will be a focal point for the team. However, if these players prosper, the Cardinals feel good about their chances to compete in the National League Central. Again, that comes from Katie Wu's piece over at The Athletic. Alex, this is kind of what we were discussing yesterday. And I understand there are legitimate fair viewpoints from a number of different angles on whether or not this is the right approach for the team to take. I personally like it. I get the alternative viewpoint, though, that this could be a mistake for them. I saw earlier today on this point, ESPN put together their projections for the 2025 season. And they were looking, okay, who are the best teams? How do these teams rank? What are their projections win total-wise? They have the Cardinals projected with 80 wins. Elsewhere in the division, they've got the Brewers projected for 82 wins. The Cubs projected for 82 wins. The Reds and the Pirates both with 75 wins. In other words, every team in the division is somewhere between 75 and 82 wins.
National League Central is awful.
So bad. This is why I think there's potential upside to what the Cardinals are doing here, and why, like, when they say, hey, this is a retool, this is not a tank, I agree with them, and I think that's the right way to operate. There is a scenario where the Cardinals win 86 games next year and win the division. Now, is that what everybody's looking for, the ultimate prize? No. They're not a World Series contender in basically any scenario next year in my mind. But taking that next step with young players being the core group behind it is a positive step in the right direction. And then if you get positive results, you can then push going into next offseason, and that's when you start adding to the core. Alex, when you read this earlier today, you see what their plan clearly is based on them likely keeping Ryan Helsley as well as a part of this. What was your takeaway?
I like it. I'm glad. Like, I thoroughly enjoy the fact that they're saying, look, we want 600 at-bats for Nolan Gorman. We want Jordan Walker to be in the outfield all year without the threat of being sent down. We want to see the Burlesons, the Nootbars, although I think we've seen the Nootbars, and you know what the expectation is, minus the injuries.
Okay.
Well, Pajes is the one that I was like, are you kidding me? But sure, why not? Fair expectations. And then Ivan Herrera. Like, that's what I thought that they were going to be doing when they had the 17 press conferences. I thought that they were going to be saying, all of our young guys that we are saying are going to be future pieces, we're not talking about the future anymore. You will be Major League Baseball players next year, and there will no be threat of you being sent to the minor leagues. You're going out there and playing. So I like this plan. That also does not divert me away from my opinion. I think they should probably still try and trade Ryan Helsley if they could pull it off. I understand Helsley could give you a shot to compete, but T-Bone and I are kind of on the same thinking. Like, I think you could find a closer in your system. I think you can give it to Fernandez. Is it going to be pretty all the time? Probably not. But I'd like to take the shot of bringing in something else that makes my minor league and my system great. But if you're going to do this, I don't mind you trying to get creative this offseason and finding other pieces that fit into your core. This is what I want to see the Cardinals do.
Yeah, I like that they're going with the youth movement with the at-bats. Now, I think they're more a 70, 75-win team, but I think that's okay because I think this is the year it's about finding answers, right? You don't have to go through the phase that the Blues did, which was, hey, we got to go through like that year and a half period of asset accumulation because the Cardinals, had these guys already, right? The Blues had to go out and draft a Snuggerud, a Dvorsky, a Lindstein, and then they started bringing a couple more assets as well, like this year Broberg and Holloway. Cardinals kind of had most of those guys kind of internally that you could look at and that were at the major league level already in Wynn, Burleson, Walker, Gorman, all of those guys. So let's use this as the year that is kind of where the Blues are right now, which is, hey, we're going to figure out what we have, okay? Maybe it ends up we only hit on like half of these guys, and we end up being more of the 70, 75, 80-win team. Maybe all of them hit their stride, and we get to the scenario BK's laid out, which is, maybe we're an 85, 86-win team, and we compete in our division and can win the NL Central because it sucks. But at least we can claim we won the division, and playoff experience is never a bad thing, in my opinion. Or you know what? You find out all of these guys aren't going to hit at the major league level. Like, maybe the only one that actually hits is Mason Wynn and Alec Burleson.
And you know what that becomes? A lot more of a rebuild because you have to reset your system.
But why is that a problem?
No, I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm saying you know exactly what it is, so you're getting the opportunity to look at it.
And that's why I don't mind their plan. Now, I do think they can still and should still, and this is why I've brought up Jack Flaherty when I brought it up earlier this week, which people didn't like, but the reason I brought him up was because I still think there's room where they should still be trying to get creative on the pitching side, right? Like, it's not like they can just say, oh, well, we got to trade Matz and then kick our feet up. We've got everything done. No, you can still get creative. Trade Matz, trade Fetty. Go out and sign somebody that could help you out both in the short term in this process while also helping out in the long term in case you do end up hitting on some of these guys. I don't think there's necessarily this whole idea of we just got to stay stagnant this offseason. I think there's a fair point to be had that you can bring in some pieces still to help this team, and I think that's where I'm a little more critical of them. But I don't mind this plan at all of just saying, hey, let's let these position players go because we have got to figure out what we have.
Yeah, I'm looking right now because I know people have soured so much on Walker and Gorman in particular. They're the guys that are really the faces of this rebuild or retool, whatever you want to call it. They're the faces of the young prospects at a minimum because they were the ones that were the top prospects through the system for a number of years. I wanted to bring this up because I like looking at the similarity scores on Baseball Reference page where it basically just goes through and says, hey, who were players that were similar through a certain age to the guy that you're looking at right now? And for Nolan Gorman, here's some of the names that are similar through their age 24 season to him. Isaac Paredes is one of them. He's the most similar. He's actually a good hitter.
Yeah. Cubs might question that.
Sure, it has not worked out for him since, but here's what Paredes did over the last few seasons. 20 home runs and an OPS that was 13% above league average in 2022 as a 23-year-old. 31 home runs, 100 RBIs, and an OPS that was 30% above league average as a 24-year-old in 2023. And then last year, in the first half of the season, he was an all-star and finished the season 15% above league average with 20 home runs over 150 games. It's not a bad hitter. One of the other names on this list, Jock Peterson, who has put together one hell of a major league career as a hitter. Javi Baez, who obviously fell off of a cliff, but at one point was considered an all-star in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Mike Schmidt is on this list as well. It's there's a wide range.
Mike Schmidt?
Correct.
Mark Schmidt.
The reason why I bring this up is because there's a wide range of where he's at right now and what that means long-term. Yep. Hey, I would like to know, is he Mike Schmidt? Is he Isaac Paredes? Is he Javi Baez? Is he going to be Jock Peterson? What is he? That's what you need to find out this season once and for all. Jordan Walker, it's the same thing. Steve Kemp, who was a player in the early 80s and late 70s, he was an all-star at one point in time, ended his career 20% above league average offensively. That's the most similar batter. Dave Winfield is the fourth most similar batter through his age 22 season to Jordan Walker right now. You know who's number 2 on this list, though? Dylan Carlson. Oh. Where's he at? What's he eventually going to be? Let's find out, right? So that's what this season to me is all about.
That's been my biggest problem with this Cardinals team is because they keep sitting here and telling us that we got these great prospects and, this guy's been as great as the last time we saw this was Albert Pujols in the minor leagues. But then you're just putting them back in the minor leagues and not doing anything with it. I love the fact that they're just saying, go out there and figure it out. Because, frankly, and to me, this feels a lot like fingerprints by Chaim Bloom. Because, if Chaim Bloom's taking over next year, I got to know what the hell I have in my team right now. So go out there, play, so that we can move on from it.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. And I think the floor on the Cardinals in 2025 is lower than it's been in probably 20 years. The ceiling on the 2024 Cardinals is not higher than it's been, but it's probably in line with what it's been in recent seasons. Could be a playoff team, could be a contender, probably no chance to win the World Series. The ceiling is what it's been over the last 8 years, probably pretty much the same as what it's been recently. But you don't have the same commitments in place to where that's capped out long term. And previously it's been, this is your ceiling and it's going to stay the ceiling for the next 5 years. Right now, this is the ceiling for 2024, and there's the chance to be able to raise that depending on what you end up finding out about your young player. So I think it's the right direction to go. The Cardinals finally are actually putting together with their own words what they're planning to do, and I think a lot of that has to do with, hey, we now know where our money's at, so we don't have to go all the way down into the abyss. Now we can still be a pretty competitive team with what we have available to us. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Ask us anything, sports or otherwise, coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. You've got questions. We may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's Questions and Answers on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything, sports or otherwise. Also, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. If you guys have any questions over there, we can get them on the YouTube chat as well for Ask Us Anything. Again, sports or otherwise. From the 314, guys, ask us anything. How many years of service before T-Bone gets to add his name onto the show?
Never.
At least a
Apparently
dozen.
not 4.
Dozen. Give us 12 years of service. We'll get you in. T-Bone at that point will be like our
BK,
age.
how many years of service do you have with 101?
10.
Well, they haven't spelled Kylie right on our
I
board here.
I got my full name, 5. That's good.
Good for you, man.
When did we
How
start
long were
our
you
show?
in the business, though,
I was going to say,
before?
when did we start our show? 2022?
We sharted our show.
No, we didn't shart
in-
anything. I know when to use.
The two of us were 2021.
21?
Because I started with Jamie in 20.
So I would have been in the
during
business
COVID.
for 10 years because 2011 was when I started at KMOX.
T-Bone's doing pretty well, man.
Yeah, what, you're
Pretty
23?
damn good.
24?
I wish I was 23, 25.
Oh, yeah, damn, you don't look a day over 25, am I right?
Yeah.
25, I was...
My youth beauty.
25, I was working the board on weekends at KMOX for At Your Service, and I was filling in as a producer for the Mark Reardon show.
I was in year 2 of producing the Kevin Wheeler show in this time slot here on 101 ESPN.
I wasn't even doing sports, man. I was helping out the sports department. I was doing news.
I was also serving at Buffalo Wild Wings on the side.
I was killing pests.
So, you're doing okay, man.
What are you doing on the
I
side?
I got the COVID bump, as I would call it, because when I came in, it was February
Us too,
2020.
buddy.
Us too, man. If not for COVID, I might still be the
came
pre- and
in-
post-game host.
I came in as a part-timer in February of 2020, and I think not even 6 months in, I still had not trained to be a producer yet. And all of a sudden it was, hey, we kind of need somebody to produce. So congrats, you're that guy. And I was just like, I have finals next week. But okay, I'll take my opportunity and run with it.
Oh, gosh.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from Bibis Sports Performance.
Nice.
Are the Nashville Predators a result of what rushing a retool or a rebuild process can look like? They overachieved last year, and now they're a disaster. We called this one, Alex.
Yep.
We said, hey, this better work in 2024, or they're screwed.
Yeah.
And they're screwed.
Yeah, I don't even think that's a rushing or retool. I mean, yes,
I
they
think it
did.
is.
I think this is more you threw way too many pretty shiny toys at a problem.
I think they did rush the retool because they signed Ryan O'Reilly, and then they signed Marchessault, they signed Stamkos,
Brady
like
Shea. But
that is the definition, in my opinion, of rushing a retool.
I think the younger players had already showed up for the team. Like in last year, I think expedited their expectations getting into the playoffs, and they had a lot of really good pieces. The problem was they were like, well, this is great. Let's go out and get more of it. No, what you should have done is probably gotten one of those 3 items and said, let's see if we can throw more gasoline onto this fire to see if it works. And you also screwed up by trading one of your best assets for basically nothing. You gave up a goaltender that is supposed to be like the next coming of Dominik Hasek, and you traded him for like nothing.
Yeah, I don't know what the alternative was there, though.
It sounded like, at least from what a lot of the national people were reporting at the draft, there were NHL-ready players available to them if they would have traded them. And Trotz said, no, we're not going to do that. But why? Because you traded them for a couple of draft picks. So I just think there were decisions that were made because they got way too fat and happy with what they did last year, and they went overkill on it.
All right, from the 314, from Swayze, excuse me.
Patrick?
Probably.
Yo, what's up?
Christmas season or summertime? What do you prefer? I prefer summertime. I like the fall. I'm done. Like, I'm opting out right now. This is as of yesterday, the weather sucks.
See,
for the next 2.5 months.
I like Christmas season.
Do you disagree with that?
Yeah.
I like this?
Yeah.
Oh,
the weather?
I love Christmas season.
You enjoy this weather.
I enjoy being cold rather than being
Until
hot and
January
miserable.
1st. And then on January 1st, I hate everything about it.
And to your point, like I love the Christmas season.
I do
Though
too.
I wanted to throw my Christmas tree out a window this year.
Heard that.
I enjoy Christmas season. Like, I love having the Christmas tree on, especially at night, because I like to, when I'm watching a show, turn the lights off,
Same.
get that nice glow.
See, I sleep in the basement because I love watching
and
it.
I love Christmas music, so I just love everything with Christmas. And I love, like, when that snow came, what was that, right?
Friday,
Thanksgiving
the Friday
weekend or
after
whatever?
Thanksgiving.
Dude, I was a kid in a candy store. I just love it when it snows. It just looks nice rather than raining and it's muddy, and the summer when it's hot. And
If you
humid.
would have said winter versus summer, I would have taken
winter.
summer any day of the week.
Well,
I would take winter.
the Christmas season is.
I know, but like I love from like November until December 31st. And then January 1st, I'm a miserable human being and I hate everything about it until it gets warmer
This
out.
is why I take all my vacation in December and January to get away from this godforsaken
I'm a part of the team, so you know I'm working.
I love this city. It has become my home, and we are proud to raise Luca here. But oh my God, the
You
weather.
think this
dude.
is cold? Go like
to Kansas City.
or go to Canada.
It's the same in Kansas City.
No, it's not, man. It's colder there. People were dying at a football game a couple years ago.
True.
Yeah, it was the same here. It was
No, it was
miserable.
not same here.
That was when my walls started like leaking because it was so cold.
I don't know.
outside.
I don't go outside from January until April.
Ugh, it's not fun. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get to our football pick, and we begin our December edition of the football pick. I'm excited for this one, Alex.
Are you
Excited. One more month remaining, and I think we might get T-Bone this time.
And there's and this is the,
Unlikely.
this is
You know
the
why?
best punishment of them all.
College football is about to go away.
Yeah, you're about to be screwed.
I will still kick your guys' ass with the NFL.
We'll see
picks.
about that. Tough guy, okay, tough guy.
Coming up next, Doug Armstrong added some clarity today on the timeline for the Jim Montgomery hire. We'll let you hear that. Plus, Zach Bolduc starting to open up our eyes. We'll get into that next year on BK and Ferrario.
Blues talk more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
All right, so Doug Armstrong was on with TMA earlier today, and Alex, I tried to find this quote. I can't find it in here, unfortunately, in the audio, but it was I promise you it was stated. Doug Armstrong on with the morning show clarified exactly what the timeline was in terms of when they decided, okay, Jim Montgomery is our guy. We've got to go make this hire happen. And the way that he described it was basically, hey, the day that he was fired, I had an immediate conversation with the ownership group and Tom Stillman and said, hey, this is the situation, and within 48 hours, somebody's going to give this guy a job, and I think it needs to be us. And he said there were probably 2 or 3 other teams that, in his mind, could have gone after Jim Montgomery. I'm guessing one of those teams was Montreal. We had talked about it at the time. Maybe Montreal is probably another potential landing spot.
Detroit, the other one.
And Doug made his pitch to the Tom Stillman and said, hey, this is something that we need to do. And he then clarified and said, hey, I think there are 1, maybe 2 coaches in the NHL right now that I would have done this for. And Jim Montgomery is among them. He said, I want this to be the next coach for the Blues for the next decade. There was basically no real, negotiation between the two sides for the 5-year deal. This is just something that both sides knew. This is what we want. This is what we're going to go forward with. I thought it was fascinating to hear the timeline of events where we didn't know because in the press conference he didn't want to elaborate. This morning he did with TMA and said, we knew immediately this was our guy, and we wanted to get it done. What'd you make of that?
It shows you the aggressiveness of Doug Armstrong. I mean, think about this. So Jim Montgomery was fired on November 19th. The Blues played against the Minnesota Wild at home on November 19th. And so that night, according to Doug, you approach Tom Stillman and say, look, this guy is available. And I loved how he laid it out, stating look, I explained to Tom the scenarios that are going to take place. He talked about there were a couple of teams that had 5-game homestands coming up in a couple of days. I was like, this is going to make sense in terms of if this team goes after Jim Montgomery, and we've got a little timeline that we've got to look at. And then everybody knows what took place 5 days later. You find out that Jim Montgomery is the head coach. That's the aggressiveness of Doug Armstrong. And that's why the moment that took place was the moment that I said, okay, I don't know if they view this as a retool anymore. Sure, they view it as a retool of the Dvorskys and the Snuggeruds that are still developing, and you do have to be patient for those guys because you're not going to expedite them to the NHL just because Jim Montgomery is here as the head coach. But in the sense of the roster we have in place, the fact that you're approaching your team owner, team president, about a coach that's available the night he gets fired tells you that, 1, they believe this is the guy that gets you back to the Stanley Cup window, however many years that's going to take, but 2, how much you have to pounce on that now because that's how desirable that coach would be. I would imagine, and not to put words in Doug's mouth, those other 2 guys are probably the guys that we brought up in terms of John Cooper and Jared Bednar.
He specifically referenced John Cooper a number of times in this interview where he said not that he was one of the guys, but that he views John Cooper as the pinnacle of coaching in the NHL because he's been there for a decade now, and he said that should be the goal for Jim Montgomery here. So, Jim Montgomery has had all of these stints. He was with Denver. He was in the USHL. He was with Dallas and now with Boston and eventually St. Louis. And at each one of them, you look at it, and it was a short stretch for different reasons. With USHL, he had so much success. He was able to get the opportunity at Denver. When he was at Denver, he had so much success. He got the opportunity with Dallas. When he was with Dallas, he had the off-field stuff or off-ice stuff. And so that lost his opportunity there. And then in Boston, Doug said the one that is harder for me to explain is what happened with Boston. And the next opportunity for Jim, the goal should be, this is my chance to become a decade-long coach in one spot. Because he's had success everywhere, but he has not been able to have that stability.
And you don't miss those guys. Because if you're the team, and frankly, if I'm Montreal or Detroit, and they probably look at this as well, we really didn't have a shot because Jim Montgomery has ties to St. Louis. It was always going to be St. Louis if they were interested. But if you're one of those teams, you should have done it faster. You should have probably been on the phone prior to Doug Armstrong in terms of going after them.
I don't think it was a chance. I don't think they ever had a chance.
I don't either.
Because of the relationships, this is such a relationship business. Once Army says, I'm making this move, I don't think anybody else
I
could have done
totally agree, but what I'm saying is Jim Montgomery is such a highly touted coach that every team in the NHL should have been questioning if they've got the right guy to call about it.
I think they did.
And Doug being so aggressive shows you where this team is at in his timeline.
Oh, I have no doubt that the Red Wings called Jim Montgomery. I have no doubt that the Montreal Canadiens called Jim Montgomery. I don't think this was about the Blues, like, out-aggressiving everybody else. I think this is a sign of, like, and this is a good thing for Blues fans, your organization is well thought of by the people that have been here before.
Yeah.
That's the best sign of a well-run organization is people go there and want to be back. It is, for all their faults, a really positive mark for the Cardinals. When players come here to St. Louis and play for the Cardinals, by and large, they miss their time with the Cardinals whenever they leave St. Louis. So, like, you look at Lance Lynn, and Kyle Gibson hadn't played here before, but he had always admired the way that the Cardinals went about their business. Matt Carpenter, all these guys, like, they leave, and then when given the opportunity, wants to come back. Albert Pujols wanted to come back after playing elsewhere, including for the LA Dodgers. So there is something really unique about the opportunities that exists for either coaching or playing for the organizations in St. Louis right now. And I will say, like, especially on the Blues side of things, this speaks highly to the ownership group as well.
Oh, gotcha.
That Jim Montgomery believes the ownership group will invest in this team. They will invest in the organization in a way that will allow Jim Montgomery to win at the highest possible level here in his time with the Blues. So,
and I think it's so
found
important
it to be a really fascinating conversation today.
I think it's so important that they got it done now too, because you need to figure out, just like we just talked about the Cardinals, you need to figure out what you've got in your players, because you're hitting a point of no return to where if you don't figure out that the guys you have are core pieces, you're not going to be able to move on from them. So you need to figure it out now so that this offseason you can once again be aggressive and try and round out the roster that you believe can get into that winning competitive window next season.
All right. So I did want to talk about one of those young players that you're talking about, Alex, because Zach Bolduc is apparently good now.
He's always good, man.
He was getting healthy scratched and playing like 6 minutes a night.
He was a young player. He had to earn his lumps.
And since Jim Montgomery took over, we saw that clip of Jim Montgomery talking to him during the first skate that they had together and saying, hey, go let it rip, young man.
He said, let it bleeping rip. And I'm like, yes!
Did you see that shot yesterday?
Yeah. That was Sidney Crosby-esque. Like, watch Sidney Crosby.
Okay, all right. We're doing this Hall & Oates thing again.
No. I'm not saying
Mike Hoffman.
I am not saying he's Sidney Crosby. When we get Joey on next Thursday, ask him. That's how Sidney Crosby shoots one-timers. Like, he goes down to one knee and he just lets them freaking rip. He's got a elite shot, and that shouldn't surprise anybody. It's why they drafted him 17th overall. It has nothing to do with his shot, though, of why I'm wowed with Zach Bolduc, and everything to do with everywhere else he plays on the ice. Dude bumps people off of the pucks at no concern. He'll get into a little bit of shoving matches with the other sides. He's got the speed. He's not a liability in his own end. Zach Bolduc looks like a well-rounded player. What you're waiting for is just the confidence in the offensive zone, and that's what Jim Montgomery untapped. Yeah.
And I don't know about you, BK. We talked about this yesterday, right? Like, what do you do when Booch is back? Well, Booch was in the lineup, right? So what do you do on the wing?
Yeah.
Because it was basically between him and Joseph, and that's what it ended up coming down to.
Yeah, we said it was Bolduc, Joseph, or Saad. One of those three has to come out of the lineup.
And they said it's Joseph that comes out of the lineup. And as a younger player under Bannister, I mean, you mentioned take some of your lumps. There is kind of that culture in the NHL, right? That's why Neighbor started on the fourth line. It was, hey, you're going to get minutes. You got to go out and earn it, though. You got to go earn being in the top 9 and then the top 6 and so on and so forth. And for Jim Montgomery, whether you still think they're in the retool or you think this is a sign of they believe they're a playoff team, I think either way you look at it, it is very telling that Jim Montgomery said, I'm going with the rookie in Zach Bolduc over the veteran in Joseph, saying, I believe in this kid. I believe he is a top 9 winger for us, and I believe he can help impact the team. And what does he do? Goes out there, gets a power play goal, and rewards the coach for saying, hey, I'm sticking with you, kid, and I'm going to send Joseph, who I don't think's played bad, up to the press box last night.
He's got 3 goals in 5 games under Jim Montgomery. Yep. That's the type of numbers you want, just like we talked about with Dylan Holloway under Jim Montgomery. That's the numbers you want for a 21-year-old kid.
How many of those are power play?
Just one.
Okay,
Last
just
night was
one
his
last
first
night.
power play because he got the 2 against the Rangers, which I believe were both at even strength.
I hope we see more of that. That's what I'm most interested in probably with Zach Bolduc is like what can this become on the power play?
If I'm Jim Montgomery, I'm breaking up my first unit and either playing the second unit as my first unit or I'm starting to mix and match first and second unit power plays because the first unit, as great as they've been in terms of the attempts, you're still not finding the back of the net. Bolduc's got a one-timer. Dylan Holloway's got a one-timer. Philip Broberg picked up 2 assists last night. Those 3 guys should be playing with Robert Thomas and Buchnevich and Kyrou, whoever you want to intertwine them with on that number 1 power play unit.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Blues off tonight, back in action tomorrow against the Edmonton Oilers. That's going to be a fun one to watch. Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg making their return trip to Edmonton for the first time. You'll hear Alex with a pregame coverage tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Puck drop for that one. Tomorrow night, a late one. On a Saturday, though, 9 o'clock puck drop right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Coming up next, it's time for our football pick'em. It is the first week of our pick'em in the month of December. Is this the month that we're able to take down the illustrious Tanner Hendrickson in our pick'em challenge? We'll do that next here on 101 ESPN.
to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Oh boy, here we go. It's Friday, which means it's a Pick'em Friday here on 101 ESPN with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Let's get into this.
Fridays.
I enjoy it.
I hate Fridays now.
We do this each and every Friday on the show. It's 3 picks against the spread. College football, NFL, no props, no over-unders, just against the spread bets. That's the way that we do it. We use Circa Sports in the state of Illinois. That is our exclusive odds provider here on BK and Ferrario. Alex has lost the last couple of months. I lost the first month. T-Bone has not lost yet. This is the final month of the season when it comes to our Pick'em Challenge. We'll do some Pick'ems in the playoffs and whatnot, but it's not going to be the football Pick'em Challenge the way that we do throughout the regular season. December, final month for that with somebody getting punished. Alex, you lost the last month.
No, I don't want to go first.
So that means you go first.
I don't want to go first.
Play better. So what do you have as your 1 point play?
Shut up, man.
Friend?
You went 6-0. You were playing the exact same as me until that last week. All right. I'm not touching
Feels
college football. No, it doesn't feel important. I'm not touching college football, as many would imagine. I am going to the NFL. In my 1 point play, I'm headed to beautiful, sunny Florida because there's a team there that's still trying to fight for a playoff spot, and they're taking on a team that is not fighting for a playoff spot. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it was at -6.5. Now it's at -7.
Oh, I've got it at 6.
I've got it.
Tampa Bay?
Yeah, Tampa Bay.
Oh, sorry.
We've
I
got
thought you were
different
going
games. Me and BK have one that's even better in Florida.
Sorry, I thought you were going with a different game. I apologize. Say that again,
I
Alex.
might be going with a different game. I have a few that are played in Florida. But my 1 point play is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers -7 against the Raiders.
I've got it at 6.5 if you want.
I will take it at 6.5, sir.
Okay. I hate that play. Absolutely hate it. I would take the over in that game. We don't do those on this show, but I would take the over in that game. I think the Bucs are going to score like crazy. I also think that the Raiders might be able to put up some points. Brock Bowers in that matchup scares me a little bit. I think the Raiders are able to keep that within a touchdown.
Yeah, we'll see.
I do think that ends up being a closer game than anticipated, although high scoring. So that is not the direction that I thought you were going with.
Don't worry, I have a few more Florida games coming your way.
Totally
Should we just go ahead and skip to what my play was in Florida?
Let's go to that. I will do mine as well, T-Bone, alongside you. I am going to Florida for my 2 point play where the New York Jets have given up on the season.
Yep.
Yeah, that's my 2 point play.
They're done. I don't know why they're even playing the football game. Aaron Rodgers has quit on the season. His receivers don't want to be there any longer. The defense has been abysmal. This is supposed to be a defensive-minded team. They want no part of playing. This is in Miami, where traditionally teams that are coming from the Northeast down to South Beach struggle. Give me the Dolphins minus the 6 points, dude. I don't even know if we need to explain it any further than that. They're just the far superior team with something left to play for.
This is my 2 point play, and the reason that I'm going with it is basically everything that you said, and we've seen the Dolphins do this before, right? What do the Dolphins do? I almost brought them up in our Packers segment, but I knew BK would lose his mind if I did. The Dolphins beat up on the bad teams. They don't beat contenders. Well, the Jets aren't that. To BK's point, they've given up on the year. I love them minus the 6 points at home, especially. They don't have to play in the cold. I love them minus 6 against the
The
Jets.
Dolphins are Indiana.
Yeah.
Indiana football. You go up against a bad team, man, they are going to look so good. You're going to fall in love with this offense. They go up against the good teams, you're like, wait, what happened to the team that I watched against the Jets or against the Titans? I don't understand. But, yeah, the Dolphins are a solid team but unspectacular. All right, Alex, that was your 2 point play as well?
Yeah, that was my 2 point play.
We've all got the Dolphins. minus 6 is our 2 point play.
Yeah, what could go wrong?
Yeah, that sounds like I should probably switch it.
I recommend all of you
Fading.
take the Jets plus 6.
Yep,
or
yep,
money
yep,
line,
yep,
honestly.
yep.
Yeah.
All right, my 1 point play this week is Oregon minus 3.5 in the Big Ten championship game going up against Penn State. I've said it all year long. I'm going to continue to believe it. I'll put my money where my mouth is, or my ass where my mouth is.
Ooh.
And that is that the Oregon Ducks are the best team in college football. And if I believe that to be the case, I should believe they can cover a 3.5 point spread in the Big Ten championship game to get that number 1 seed in the college football playoff, earn the bye, and show us once again that nobody else is quite at the same level as the Oregon Ducks this year. So give me Oregon minus 3.5.
Oh, this is not good for me because my 1-point play is the Oregon Ducks. Minus 3.5. Guys, Penn State.
Collusion.
The last 9 times they've been an underdog, 0-9 straight up, 2-7 against the spread. And the only reason that this is my 1-point play is I'm not sure how much this game truly matters. So I am a little skeptical that Oregon really shows up and throws everything at the wall.
The bye is what matters.
Yeah, they're in no matter what. We'll see. I am still skeptical of that. That's why it's only my 1-point play. If I knew that, hey, this is the 4th year of a 12-team playoff, Oregon is so chasing after that bye, I would have this as my 3-point play. I'm not 100% confident in that, so I've got them the minus 3.5 as my 1-point play.
All right, boys, 3-point play.
Let's do it.
I would not be shocked, by the way, if me and BK or you and I are in lines with my 3-point play.
Well, mine includes another team in Florida. It's not played in Florida, but it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm taking the Titans minus 3.5. You know another team that's kind of given up on life? The Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence.
Both of them?
Well, that's very true, yes. But I still think the Titans at least have a better roster than Jacksonville. I like that 3.5 play at home for Tennessee.
Dude, I hope I watch none of that game on Sunday.
Me too, man. I'm just going to look at the final score.
I'm going to be watching Red Zone on Sunday during the noon slate because there's not a lot of games that I'm particularly interested in this noon slate, just to be fully candid. I hope they never show a play from that game. So Red Zone, you guys watch it on Sundays as well. At the end of the Red Zone day, they will show all of the touchdowns from that day. They should just eliminate the Titans versus the Jaguars touchdowns. Just don't show me any of it.
Give me one when they take the lead and win it by 7.
I'm going to comment on this game since it's been brought up now. This is going to be the Tone Ranger, but I'm going with it anyways. I don't know how you can make this a 3-point play. I don't know how you could trust either of those teams to even pick a side, let alone put it at 3 points. So
the under 39.5 is so telling.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
So I know I'm coming off with a tone problem, but we're going to use this as a clip for whether you win this pick or not. But I don't know how you have faith in that game at all.
The over-unders this weekend are looking like the first couple of weeks of the season when everybody's like, what happened to offense in the NFL? It's that way this week. Chargers-Chiefs is 42. Jags-Titans 41. Jets-Dolphins 44. The Saints-Giants is at 40 right now. Browns-Steelers at 43. 44 on Seahawks-Cardinals, and then 43 on Bears versus 49ers. It's a rough week for offense across the NFL. All right, my 3-point play. T-Bone, I have the feeling we might actually have all 3 of the same picks this week. Going back to the college football slate, and I think one of these 2 teams is actually deserving of a spot in the college football playoff, and so I will bet on them this weekend to punch their ticket to the college football playoff, and this is in the ACC championship game where I have SMU taking down Clemson and covering the 2.5-point spread. I think SMU has been the better team all season long. Clemson has shown us time and time and time again that they are pretenders, not contenders. Every time they go up against a real threat, they find a way to fall short. They lost to South Carolina. They lost to Louisville. They lost big against Georgia. Give me SMU minus 2.5 against Clemson.
Though I do like that pick, that is not my 3-point play.
Man, I was hoping both of you guys would have all 3 picks the same so that I can take the 4-point advantage.
My 3-point play is in the NFL. And you know, guys, if you want to win, and you want to win like T-Bone, sometimes you got to bet against your favorite team. And that is what I am doing tonight. Wow. You know, I'm going to put the money not where my heart is, but where you're really going to win the big bucks. Guys, the last time the Rams played a really good contender named the Eagles in prime time, you know what happened? The Eagles bullied the ever-living hell out of them. I think the Bills are going to do the same thing. I'm shocked it's only minus 3.5, even though this is a road game for Buffalo. I think they're going to come in, and I think they're going to kick the crap out of the LA Rams. I like the Bills minus 3.5.
I'll tell you the other pick that I really wanted to do, and it was between them and the Titans.
Can we say
game.
It on 3?
Sure.
Is it
an NFL game?
One. Yeah.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. The
Saints.
Bears.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Interesting.
The only reason I didn't take the Saints was because I don't know if Neighbors is playing or not. But, like, it's in New York. The Giants are also just an abysmal team.
That's why I'm not doing it. Dome team on the road at the Saints. Good defensive line.
Yeah.
There's no Taysom Hill in that one either, which sounds like a weird thing to say, but he's been a really big part of the Saints offense over the last few weeks.
It worried me.
I have a fear that game ends like 13-10, and the Saints win, but don't end up covering the spread.
I don't trust either of those teams.
Exactly.
That's why I wouldn't touch it. Who's yours? Bears?
Yeah, Bears on the road at the 49ers. I think the 49ers.
I thought about that.
When you have a team this good that's going through this much over the course of the season, and they finally last week have what feels like the final straw for their season, that's when I feel like a team starts to let go of the rope. I think the Bears have strangely more incentive to keep playing right now than the 49ers do. So I would take the Bears plus the 4.5 in that one.
Tex, I listen to the winner here. I would not take that game either.
I would take the Bears money line.
I just don't trust the Bears.
I can't wait that it's the Rams that are going to shove it up your you-know-what this week.
That's going to be amazing.
It's going to be so good.
3-0 week.
No, we can't.
Lose.
No, we can't.
All right, those are our picks for the week.
Three
picks each and every week here on BK and Ferrario. We'll reveal our pick'em on Monday here on the show. All right, with Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We're broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. Jordan Deacon doing a fantastic job for us back in the studios today. Coming up next, we have an update on Missouri and what their plans are at the quarterback position going into next year. They've got one guy that's expected to make his way on campus next week. We'll tell you who that is next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Last night, the Blues took on the Calgary Flames and came away with a 3-2 overtime win. They are back in action tomorrow night in Edmonton. Pre-game coverage starts at 8, and then puck drop is at 9. As for college football, we'll have the Mountain West Championship tonight at 6:30, as well as the Big 12 and SEC Championships tomorrow starting at 11. And to top it off on Sunday, we've got an NFL tripleheader kicking off at 11. You can hear all of that action right here on 101 ESPN. I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. All right, let's give you an update on what's going on with Missouri football. So it has now been announced, and it's been reported by Gabe DeArmond of PowerMizzou.com. He was on with the morning show earlier today. You can check out their podcast at 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app. It's presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Miller Moss, the former USC quarterback, former 4-star recruit. He's a senior. He's got 1 year of eligibility remaining. He is going to be visiting Missouri next week. Now, next week is the first time that these transfers are allowed to go on to their prospective schools' campuses. Missouri's getting the first visit for Miller Moss, which is huge. You always want to be the first visit, and you hope to convince these guys, especially the big-time portal transfers, not to go on any more visits. And if you got the first opportunity to convince him, they don't have any other chances to be able to go find out what the pitch is from other teams before you get to do that. So Mizzou has Miller Moss, who appears to be their top quarterback target, on campus next week. For those that aren't familiar with Miller Moss, he got his first opportunity this year to be the starter at USC following Caleb Williams. And the reason why he was the starter and they didn't go get somebody else is because he played so well in their bowl game last year and convinced Lincoln Riley, all right, this is our guy. Well, they got a few games in. First of all, he was amazing in that game opener against LSU. It was spectacular for them. Then things started to go a little bit sideways. In my opinion, Miller Moss was the scapegoat. That entire team was terrible this year. The defense was atrocious despite having a full new defensive staff. The offense was not what it has been in the past. Their offensive line was horrific. And despite all of those things around him, in 9 games, he had 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and finished averaging 285 yards per game. Pretty good season overall, all things considered. That's better than what Brady Cook was able to do, for example, for Mizzou this year. So he's considered to be one of the top transfer quarterbacks available. I think this would be a great signing for Mizzou. If they're able to get him, I'm not sure they could have done much better. Jackson Arnold of Oklahoma is another option that's out there. That's one of the top transfers available. Connor Wiegman of Texas A&M, former top prospect, is one of the top quarterback transfers available as well. There's not much else beyond those guys right now in the portal. Alex, how would you feel if this is the way that Missouri went?
I feel like this would be a success. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I haven't seen a whole lot of USC Miller Moss action. So, but at least from everything you read on him, he's an upgrade over what you've had. And I think that's what's most important right now. Like Brady Cook, we've talked about it, has had a great career at Mizzou, but you need a little bit more. And Miller Moss is one of those guys that provides that. It sounds like he's great in the pocket. It sounds like he's able to distribute the ball and manage the game really well. At least what I was reading the other night says that, yeah, he'll make some timely errors on your team, but what other quarterback hasn't done that unless you're bringing in these 5-star superstars? So I think for what's available, at least with what we've heard and the quarterbacks that are out there, this would be a massive win for Drinkwitz because it's an upgrade over what you had, and you hope that you could take the team to the next level with this.
Yeah, I think it's a signing that makes sense for Mizzou, but I do have almost like buyer beware kind of situation running in my head, and maybe it is nothing. But, you know, Lincoln Riley, think about the quarterbacks he's had in the past, right? He's had Jalen Hurts. He's had Baker Mayfield. He's had Kyler Murray. Most recently, he had Caleb Williams. Like, those are Heisman guys that won the Heisman and are having success in the NFL right now. And now this guy's transferring out of USC and got benched by Lincoln Riley. Now, you know, this is one of those where it might just be, hey, you're right, BK. He became kind of the scapegoat for the USC Trojans program. I also do have some fears of, hey, man, Lincoln Riley knows what the hell he's doing, right? He wouldn't let this kind of quarterback walk out the door. And we saw he let Spencer Rattler walk, right? And Rattler was okay at South Carolina.
I would say Rattler was really good in his final season at South Carolina.
Fair. His first year at South Carolina,
He also had one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen. Now, this is not me like saying you're wrong on this, but I do think. Tone?
No, this is me not saying that you're wrong, but
Tone, I apologize.
we just gave you credit in the commercial break, man.
Let me phrase this a different way. T-Bone, this is why you're wrong. Spencer Rattler in his final season at South Carolina was actually really, really good for him, and I think it goes underrated how good he was because of how horrible their offensive line was. He was super talented, and I think there is some similarities there between him and what you're seeing with Miller Moss. There's one other quarterback that gets forgotten that ended up having a lot of success after leaving Lincoln Riley, and it was Tanner Mordecai. I don't know if you remember him. He had one season at Wisconsin where he was fine. It was last year. But at SMU for 2 seasons, he was great for them, dude. Put up 72 total touchdowns, 22 interceptions over those 2 seasons, led all of college football with 3,600 yards, 39 touchdowns, and 300 yards per game at SMU back in 2021. The reason why I bring that up is because he was a guy that barely got any opportunities at Oklahoma because of what he had in front of him. And that's kind of similar to Miller Moss, where he didn't really have any opportunities because Caleb Williams was the guy there. Moss at one point was considered to be the next guy in line, and then Lincoln Riley got the job. Caleb Williams decided to transfer over. It's like, okay, yeah, you're not going to start over the future #1 overall selection if you're Miller Moss. I think there are some similarities to what we saw with Rattler and with Tanner Mordecai. And if he came in and had, like, the midpoint of their 2 careers with their schools that happened after Lincoln Riley, I'd be thrilled with that if that ends up being Miller Moss's success at Mizzou.
Yeah, and I think it's a move you have to make if you're Mizzou, right? Like, you don't just sit out of the train. Like, you don't just say, no, not interested in that guy. Like, they need a quarterback, and they can't go in-house with this kind of search. But it is just one of those where in the back of my mind, it's like like when a guy when the Dodgers just move on from a guy. I'm not just going to look at that and go, what the hell are the Dodgers doing? I'm going, wait, the Dodgers know what the hell they're doing. What's wrong with that guy? And that's the way I look at Miller Moss. And you might be right. He may be in between those 2 quarterbacks that you read off, Rattler and them. So maybe, and if he is, then that's a win for the Missouri Tigers.
No doubt.
But there is definitely a vetting process that really needs to happen for Eli Drinkwitz and the Missouri Tigers of, okay, why would Lincoln Riley, this quarterback general that's had just these incredible guys in his programs over the last decade, why is he benching Moss and why is he letting him walk?
Yeah, it's a fair question, and I would say it's because he has too high of standards in some scenarios. Like Baker Mayfield's an NFL talent, Kyler Murray NFL talent, Jalen Hurts NFL talent, Caleb Williams NFL talent. Are we sure that Lincoln Riley is the quarterback whisperer, or are these guys making Lincoln Riley look a little better than he is? Like Dabo used to get that credit, right? It was Deshaun Watson, then it was Trevor Lawrence.
And it was DJ Uwe.
This guy can just develop the hell out of these quarterbacks. And then he gets to the next one, which was DJ Uiagalelei, and it's like, oh, maybe it was just those quarterbacks that were amazing, and Dabo was along for the ride. I think Lincoln Riley might be looking for the next ticket out of town to be able to get his next paycheck while he still looks like he's the quarterback whisperer. Cliff Kingsbury had some of this, right? Oh, wow, look what he did with Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. Well, was that him, or was that just Patrick Mahomes?
That was only one guy, right? That was one guy. I mean, I just read off, 4 or 5 Heisman winners that are elite NFL not elite, but they got to the NFL. They were elite college football quarterbacks. Like, one guy, maybe 2 guys, I can get that. But when you're Lincoln Riley, I mean, you've brought in 4 guys, right? He goes and gets Jalen Hurts in the transfer portal saying, yeah, I'm bringing that guy in.
Kyler Murray was the #1 quarterback in college football. Jalen Hurts took Alabama to a national championship. Caleb Williams was the #1 quarterback recruit in college football. I just don't know how much credit I want to give to Lincoln Riley for developing those 3. Baker's a little different because he was a guy that was a walk-on at Texas Tech, had a bunch of success there, don't get me wrong, but then Patrick Mahomes happened. And ended up coming over and developing at Oklahoma. So if you want to point to somebody, he's the guy that I would point to. But those other 3 were pretty ready-made by the time that they got to Lincoln.
Now, this isn't tied to Lincoln Riley, but wasn't Jaden Daniels this too, where He left
Arizona State.
Arizona State, and then he went to the transfer portal.
Well, people thought he was terrible at Arizona State. He ends up going to LSU and has all the success.
So that's why it's like I can understand being skeptical of a guy at the previous program, but sometimes you get away from the program and you go on to have success elsewhere. And if I'm Mizzou, I want to take a shot on that, because what's worse is going with somebody in your system already and saying he takes us to the level we need to get to, because that's a lot of pressure to put on a guy who hasn't gotten that chance yet.
Tanner raises the fair warnings, because this is not a surefire guaranteed it will work. It is a risk that you're taking on. But all of these quarterbacks that are currently available are risks. They're getting away for a reason. And Missouri is, I believe, shopping in the lane of, we've at least seen this guy do it at the college football Power 4 conference level. Yeah. And that's the case for Miller Moss. You've seen Weigman do it, but with less success. You've seen Jackson Arnold do it, but with almost no success at the college football level. The other thing, and the reason why I think that the number one reason why I believe Miller Moss is the best target for Missouri to go after this year in the portal is because he has 1 year of eligibility remaining. Some of those other guys that I mentioned have 2+ seasons. I think Mizzou wants Zollers, the 5-star incoming quarterback, to be their internal candidate to be the next starter at Mizzou. This will allow for that grace period to get to Zollers. And if you have one of these other guys, you risk Zollers potentially transferring before he gets that opportunity at Mizzou. You don't want that to happen. So you at least want the job to come open next year, so that opportunity is presented to Zollers. If he shows you during practice and during spring and everything, he can be the next guy. So I really like it for that reason as well. One other thing to get to real quick before we get to the junk drawer on the other side. You guys see Bill Belichick is interviewing with UNC, and not only did it once, but yesterday apparently there was another interview between Bill Belichick in North Carolina to be the next head coach there. Do you think there's any the obvious thing here is that's going to be a disaster. That's not going to work. What? Is there a way for this to work? Am I underselling this as a possibility?
I think it could work. I think the odds are it's mostly a disaster, right? But the reason I think that it could potentially work is college football is not college football of 10 years ago.
Yeah. It's NFL light.
It's basically the NFL, where you've now got basically a cap on what you can spend. And most schools have a general manager now, which I learned Illinois had one. Didn't even know that until yesterday. So, it is basically almost the NFL. Now, the game is different. You can't have such complex defensive and offensive schemes, and that would be one area where I think he would really struggle with. But I can see a scenario where it could work because of where we are in the modern game of college football. And if you're North Carolina, what do you got to lose?
Yeah.
Right? It's the perfect big-name hire. We never thought Dion was going to work at Colorado, but it was perfect for that program of, hey, go get the big name. Why not? For North Carolina, same thing. You're in a crappy conference in the ACC. Go sign that big guy, and maybe you could become a powerhouse of that conference.
And everybody talks basketball with UNC, so you know what Bill Belichick can do? You can bring a little bit more relevancy back to the football program, but not have the same expectations as one of those power schools that you go to and you have to win right away. And if you're Bill Belichick, you know what could get you back to the NFL? One successful season in college.
Man, I don't know. If you go to college, I think this is it.
Really?
I think this would be his final stop.
I don't think he's got two more jobs.
How
I think
old
it's
is Belichick? 68?
Yeah, something like that.
He's got a girlfriend that's 30-something. He's young.
Touche. He's 72 years old.
Yeah.
He's not taking another
that's
NFL
just
job
a number,
after this,
man.
That's why I'm surprised by this, because the timing is strange. He's not going to know if he was potentially going to get an NFL job or not. I guess maybe back channeling, you could find out if there are teams that are interested in you, and if the answer is no, you got to take something. He clearly wants to get back into coaching next year in some capacity. I don't know, man. I don't think it would work, because his drafting wasn't particularly good by the end, and that's a huge part of this, is player procurement. It's interesting, though. It would be a fun storyline next year in college football. If he's going to take a job, the ACC is the place to do it. He's going to have an opportunity there to be able to, just by coaching alone, I know he can coach guys up. He's going to have a good defense in college football. Yeah. I also wonder, his defense is super in-depth. Would college kids take to that?
No.
Is it going to work in college football the same way that it did?
If you want to get to the NFL, I would. If I'm a college kid and Bill Belichick's telling me what to do,
well, it's not that. It's are they capable of being able to understand everything?
Wasn't that the problem with who was the DC for Mizzou for a year?
Steve Wilkes.
Wilkes, thank you.
It was too much.
That was the issue. It was too much, and that's what you see with NFL guys when they go to the pro or to college level. Is The NFL, you got to make it more complex, right? You got to have more layers because it is the best of the best at every position.
And his whole thing is we're going to change our game plan every single week. College teams, we see this. For the most part, it's one game plan, man. You know exactly who you are defensively. You've got an identity there, and then you can switch up a couple of things or tweaks to that game plan. But generally speaking, it's not a different game plan every single week. It's why he required so many really smart players on the defensive side of the ball. So it would be a fascinating experiment. My money would be on this does not work. I have money on him not taking this job to begin with, but it's an interesting storyline, certainly. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes or so. There's a story in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch earlier today that the Chiefs are a bigger story in St. Louis than the Cardinals. I'm calling hogwash on that. We'll get to that in 15 minutes. The Junk Drawer is next.
Blues talk more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
The junk drawer. I want to read you guys a sad story.
A sad story?
Yep, sad story. Genuinely. Not making this up.
I don't want to do this.
So Adrian Wojnarowski explained yesterday, finally, his decision to leave ESPN for St. Bonaventure in a decision that shocked everybody, including his employer. He did not give them a heads up prior to. He just decided, you know what, this is an opportunity that I can't pass up. He's finally explained the decision, and I found it to be pretty revealing and vulnerable, what he said here. This is from the New York Post. Wojnarowski took notice of how many associated with ESPN did not travel to Arkansas for a memorial that Chris Mortensen, a longtime NFL insider for the network who died from throat cancer back in March. He then continued, quote, "It made me realize and remember that the job isn't everything. In the end, it's just going to be your family and close friends. And it's like, nobody gives a bleep. Nobody remembers who broke the stories in the end. It's just vapor." Man, there is so much in this. So much in this. And this is kind of inside baseball with media, but it's something that I have thought a lot about, Alex, over the last 5 years or so, doing this job that we do, because it is all-encompassing. Like, I have an amazing job. We have an amazing job. And what we do is not quote-unquote hard. Like, there are so many jobs out there that are so much more important and meaningful and significant for people. But our job also sometimes can feel like it's just vapor. Like you talk for 3 hours and it's out there, but you also put so much freaking time into this thing. Like, I am always thinking about this show. And I feel like our show, even, to a degree, resonates, and maybe this is just me telling myself a story, more than like a breaking news story does. Because he's right. Who cares who broke a news story at the end of the day? It matters that the news was broken. But once the news breaks, it is then disseminated into 100 different places, and then it becomes analysis. And then it becomes, what did somebody say about that news that is broken? And nobody even ties a name anymore with so-and-so breaks this story. It's just, hey, this is the story. I think it's really cool that Wojnarowski finally decided to make this decision for himself. I find it to be so freaking sad that this is the way that it happened. That he went to Chris Mortensen's memorial and realized, oh my God, the people that I work with aren't here. Mortensen was a legend at ESPN, dude. And he was one of the biggest insiders for the network for 40 years on the sport that matters the most for that network. And then Wojnarowski was diagnosed with cancer, and that's when he decided, you know what, this isn't worth it for me. The whole story is worth your time. It's over in Sports Illustrated if you want to read the full thing, but it made me do some internal thinking as well about what we do, what this is, and kind of what matters in life, you know?
Again, to second what you said, like, this is the best job that I could have asked for. It's been my dream since I was a kid in high school. And for the first 10 years of me working in this business, it was all work, all work, all work. I don't care. Personal life be damned. It's all about work.
No doubt.
The moment we had our first daughter, the moment we had Adelaide, it was kind of a come to Jesus moment.
ESPN has your chance to win a pair of tickets to see your St. Louis Blues take on the New Jersey Devils December 17th at Enterprise Center. The first 12,000 fans in attendance that night will take home a Jake Neighbors Winter Classic bobblehead, courtesy of Pepsi Zero Sugar. Get more details and get entered to win that free pair of tickets for Blues versus Devils on December 17th, right now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. Hey, Blues fans, enter the Verizon Discover NHL Winter Classic Sweepstakes for your chance to see the St. Louis Blues take on the Chicago Blackhawks New Year's Eve in the Discover NHL Winter Classic at Wrigley Field in Chicago. One winner will receive 4 tickets to the game plus a $3,000 gift card. Hurry to select St. Louis area Verizon locations or go to 101ESPN.com. We're back to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Ever there was a metaphor for the segment that we just had, it was what took place.
About to get real personal.
Alex said I had a come to Jesus moment about how my personal life has to take precedent over my current job. And immediately, bam! Internet glitches out. We're gone. No longer are we on.
Maybe that was a good idea, though. Maybe I was digging myself a hole, and the air link saved us there.
Yeah, Hubbard Radio said, not today. So that is
you will work.
That is the way that this thing goes. He's Alex Estibo, and I'm BK. If you guys have missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
You can always check us out on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. Hey, they're up as long as we are on the air. So
if they go down, we go down.
That's right. All right. So there was a headline earlier today, Alex, that was, I think, specifically targeted at me. And it's from Dan Caesar. The title is, have the Chiefs really surpassed the Cardinals in St. Louis popularity?
Oh, Dan just hates listening to you talk about the Chiefs all the time.
I clicked on it because, of course. I was like, well, the answer to this question is a resounding no, but let me find out why they're even asking the question here right now. And it starts out, have the Chiefs eclipsed the Cardinals in terms of popularity in St. Louis? The question might seem preposterous. Yes, it does, Dan Caesar. And it probably is just that. But at least in terms of television viewership, it's strictly no contest. The Chiefs are romping. Their worst-rated game this season in St. Louis has a 20% higher rating locally than the best-rated Cardinals telecast of the year. And it goes beyond that. KC not only routs the Redbirds in terms of TV ratings, it is dominating all television in the market. After the Chiefs were involved in the 7 most-watched programs appearing in St. Louis TV in the year that ran in 2023, KC's games this season account for the 8 most-watched programs in the Gateway Cities television in the period that ran starting in February until we are here today. Alex, I get it. The Chiefs dominate TV ratings, which is what I would expect. The NFL in general dominates in TV ratings. If we looked back at the 100 most watched shows this year, not just in St. Louis, but nationally, it's going to be like 70 NFL games, 25 college football games, and then 5 other things. In any sport or any other like huge event, whatever it might be, like the State of the Union address might be up there, but otherwise it's going to be mostly the NFL over the course of a season. So, yeah, I would anticipate that the Chiefs are a massive, massive viewing audience every single week in St. Louis because we get them, and they're the best team in the NFL, and they're relatively local. But this idea that they're bigger than the Cardinals in St. Louis is nonsense. You can't only judge it based on TV ratings. First of all, because those TV ratings are misleading. One of them plays regularly on Fox or CBS. The other plays on FanDuel Sports Midwest, where the game is not even able to be viewed by half of the city at any given time.
People are still trying to figure out how they can watch it on FanDuel Sports Midwest.
The other thing is the Chiefs play 17 regular season games, so every game feels like an event. In baseball, you play 162 of them. So, yeah, that's going to be a little bit different in terms of the viewership. Importantly, if you go to a Starbucks today, guess what they're going to be talking about in St. Louis? The Cardinals. When you were at your 4th of July, what are your people talking about as you're sitting around eating your barbecue? You're talking about the Cardinals, man. St. Louis cares so deeply about the baseball team here in the city. I don't care what the ratings tell you. This is a base through and through, and more specifically, it is a Cardinals town through and through. So I get what they're trying to do here. They did it to me. I gave them exactly what they were looking to click in the discussion. But no, this is not a Chiefs town. That's nonsense.
No, that was the first thing I thought of, and I didn't even click on the article, BK, because, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs are heavily viewed in the area. 1, it's local, but 2, you're talking about the biggest product at the point of where there's not much going on a Sunday when typically the Kansas City Chiefs are playing primetime situations. The Cardinals or the Chiefs, if you're giving just a general St. Louis fan one of the two, I just how they're going to lean towards what the Cardinals. But you're right. More than anything, it's not what are they talking about with the hopes of the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl destination. They're talking about what John Mozeliak is going to do in the middle of December once they get to the winter meetings. You get to February, you're not talking about, oh, man, did the Chiefs pull off a Super Bowl win this year? No, they're talking about why didn't the Cardinals trade away Ryan Helsley before the start of spring training. This will never be they're dipping off endings conversation. It is going to be a Cardinals town from start to finish for every single person. And then when the Chiefs are successful, when there's not much going on for the Cardinals, then people will talk about it. But they're always going to watch the NFL.
Yeah, I do think there's some truth to the notion that this is becoming more of a Chiefs town. Like, I think after the Rams left, there was, a 5-year stretch where a lot of St. Louisans were like, bleep the NFL, want nothing to do with them, boycott the NFL and everything that it stands for. And I think there are still some that feel that way, definitely. Like, we see them in our audience.
Oh, yeah.
After the 5-year stretch or so, I think a lot of fans, especially those that listen to this station right now, came to the conclusion, all right, listen, the product's good. I like watching on Sundays. It's on while I'm at my family's place or whatever. I like betting on the games, whatever it might be. I'll go ahead and watch a team. And I think a lot of those people that came to that conclusion, some of them are Bears fans, some of them Colts fans, some of them Chiefs fans, some of them Packers fans. There's regional stuff that goes on. I think the number one team in that regard, though, is the Chiefs. And part of that is because they have the biggest star in the NFL, Travis Kelce. That storyline, I'm sure, has played a part in that as well. And
He's in a Hallmark movie.
Well, he was and his mother was.
Same thing.
But the storyline is certainly there. This idea that they have taken over for the Cardinals is nonsense. All right, it sounds like we're getting spotty again on our connection. No! So we're going to go to break right now. Hopefully we can clean that up. The 1 o'clock hour is an adventure, so stick with us. Coming up next, Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie. He joins us for our weekly hit here on BK and Ferrario.
Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. We're going between the pipes with former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna.
Between the Pipes is refreshed by Macadoodle Spirits, fine wine, beer, and cigars. Now open in Darden Prairie.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by our friend, former NHL goalie. He's Mike McKenna joining us here on the show. Alex, last week after I left the show on Wednesday, I was able to go over to Macadoodles in Darden Prairie. Dude, the spot is amazing. Mike's going to tell you more about that coming up later on in our conversation. He joins us every week on behalf of Macadoodles. I got some great wine. I got a nice bottle of whiskey. Their beer selection there is genuinely as good as you'll find anywhere in the city. So we'll talk to Mike McKenna about that coming up here in just a minute. But, Mike, we got to talk about these Blues. Another good win last night, a gritty win in overtime in Calgary. They have now had points in each of the 5 games that have been coached by Jim Montgomery. What'd you take away from their performance yesterday in Calgary? And we'll hope to have Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, joining us here.
He thought it was a barn burner in the old barn
show
in Calgary, Canada.
Oh, Mike McKenna, do we have you there now? I've been told by Jordan Deacon that it sounds like he's back with us. Mike, are you there, my friend? We will try that again.
Barn burner for Mike McKenna, ladies and gentlemen.
Alex, when I watched that game last night, we probably didn't give enough credit to him earlier in the show today, but I thought Jordan Bennington was spectacular. I thought he was absolutely amazing for you last night. He was at 39 shots against overall in that one, 3 goals allowed, and the play that he made on Huberdeau in particular to keep that game where it was, that was classic Bennington.
I mean, so I was on with Calgary radio yesterday before the game. Shout out to myself, I guess, on Sportsnet.
Weird flex.
Not a weird flex at all.
That's a good flex. Good for you,
but
man.
they asked about Jordan Bennington and what he's meant to the Blues, and I said what he's meant is he's kept this team from going into a rebuild, and last night was a perfect example of it. Like, you weren't playing your best hockey, and Jordan Bennington allowed you to find your hockey game. You get to overtime because he plays so well in the third period. He makes some saves. And then in overtime, of course, he stops an odd man rush going one direction and then allows the Blues to score on the other side. So Bennington deserves so much props of keeping this team alive, but also Colton Parayko, the other guy that gets named to the top 4 or the 4 nations in Team Canada, gets a goal, the game-winning goal, but also played 27 minutes, I think it was. Curbs put this stat out.
29 minutes.
29 minutes. So Colton Parayko, when he plays 26 minutes or more in his career, the Blues are 32, 10, and 11, which is like a 703 points percentage in the National Hockey League.
He right now is on pace for 15 goals this season and 40 points this season.
Somebody's been saying he's a number 1 defenseman.
Would be a career high for Colton Parayko. Sounds like we do have Mike McKenna back on the line for us, former NHL goalie. He joins us each and every Friday here on the show. Mike, we had asked you before our lines cut out, we got a little disconnected there, what you made of the game last night. Another win for him, a little bit of a gritty win this time around. What was your biggest takeaway from their 4-3 victory in overtime?
You know, I think at this stage, guys, I think it's not just the Jim Montgomery bump for the team. It's that they're getting closer to being healthy again, right? Like, you get Robert Thomas is back in the lineup. Noticeable difference in the game. Philip Broberg, look how he's playing for the team. And you're also seeing those younger players that we've been waiting to kind of take off, the Buldukes of the world. What happens? It's happening, right? Like, the big plays are coming, the goals are coming, and it just seems like there's a carefree factor playing for Montgomery. But I'm not really sure that the Blues win this game a month ago. This game against the Flames took a little bit of guts, took a little bit of pushback. It also took some really good goaltending, though, guys. And that's where, if there's anything that makes me nervous about the Blues right now, it's still the turnovers. It's the carelessness with the puck. But Binnington and Hofer, to this point this year, have largely been able to bail them out. Can they continue to do that, or can the team just tighten up defensively? Those are the two things I think keeping this team from, barring any further injury, really moving up the ladder in the NHL.
And Mike, we've learned, at least in 5 games with Jim Montgomery, that he has such an impact on the details of the game. Can that area get cleaned up for this Blues team? Because it felt like in the early portion of the season, it was an area that was cleaned up.
Yeah, and I think honestly what happened was that, Bannister and the way he coached was really detailed as well, but it almost felt like the players just got stifled and kind of had enough of having to play so structured, which there's such a fine line with this. And sometimes it's just a different voice that may need that. But, having been around teams that have been coached by Jim Montgomery, it's not just details. It's also just kind of a belief in what he's doing. There's times where he'll just look at the players and be like, you know what, you guys need to figure it out on your own here. And he'll put a little bit of the onus on the players themselves to make it happen. Well, I'll tell you what, if you keep making the same turnovers defensively, at some point you're just not going to be in the lineup, or you're not going to get the same minutes. And that's where I think that there's an accountability now that he's going to hold the players to, that if they don't clean it up, they're not going to get the same minutes. And, for me right now, Parayko's playing as many minutes as he is because he's playing the best hockey of his life, I think. I mean, guys, I don't know what you think, but he has been an absolute number one defenseman. He's been the Alex Pietrangelo that we've been waiting for. The only thing that's not there is the power play time. That's it with Colton Parayko. I couldn't think you could ask any more of him. So I think the Blues will get cleaned up a little bit more defensively. I hope so, because if they don't, they're still going to be hanging out mid-pack by the end of the season.
And we are starting to see that power play time come from Colton Parayko as well. Last night, he finally ended up 3 minutes on the power play for the Blues. It's him and Broberg now with Justin Falk out of there. What do you think about the ceiling for Colton Parayko offensively? Because right now he's on pace for 15 goals and 40 points this year. It would be the first time that he's ever accomplished either of those numbers. What does that do for how he's viewed nationally, in your opinion?
Well, and just to flip back to it really depends on Justin Falk and his health and when he comes back. This is probably a temporary fix, but if Parayko keeps filling the net or putting pucks on at a rate that you expect on the power play, who's to say he doesn't end up there, right? I mean, he could end up in that true Victor Hedman, Pietrangelo role. It's just, I still think you're looking at Falk being there, but I think that the rest of the hockey world views Colton Parayko probably in a much higher light than even a lot of Blues fans had for a long time. I think we're almost just now waking up to how good he has been and is. And part of that, you can see it when you get picked to play for Team Canada. There's not many spots on that roster on the blue line, fellas. Like, think about that club that he's in. To be in that spot, to make that team, to play in that tournament, I think that really speaks to how he is viewed, at least at the management level. I know what the players think of him. Every player in the league would like to have Colton Parayko on their team. But I think almost in our market, we saw the years and years of what ceiling can he hit, and it's hard to forget that. So we got to stop living in the past here as Blues fans sometimes, right, and be happy with what we have.
Mike, just one more on Parayko. From a goaltender's perspective, what does he do in the defensive zone that makes goaltenders' lives easier?
Well, he shuts down plays so quickly. And it's not just that he's got a great reach. Obviously, when you've got his size, you can put your stick out there and cover 15, 20 feet of ice, it feels like at times. But I think Parayko, for me, like watching him is just – and especially over the course of his career, his closing rate and the angles with which he takes players wide and has improved over time. The game sense that's come with it. And so it's not just time and space. It's also putting players into positions on the ice where they're not going to have a great chance to score on myself as a goaltender, right? Or in Binnington or Hofer. And I think that Parayko has really not just been able to leverage his reach, but really to start using his body and his feet to angle his feet, to put the opposing players along the wall, in corners, and just keep them from middle ice. He's become really adept at finding the right areas to make the other team a non-issue as a threat offensively.
We're talking to Mike McKenna here on 101 ESPN, former NHL goalie. He joins us each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario throughout the Blues season. A little bit of news in the NHL to pass along here before we get to our next question with Mike. The Rangers, according to reports, are sending Jacob Trouba to the Anaheim Ducks.
What?
So that is your...
They're not getting Brady Tkachuk for Jacob Trouba?
Your news in the NHL. Jacob Trouba has played his last game as a Ranger. He will be going to the Ducks and spending his time in the Western Conference now. As we get a little bit big picture here, Mike, how do you view the Blues? Still a small sample size, but the last 5 games we've seen some improvements under Jim Montgomery. How do you view the Blues relative to the teams that are going to be competing for the Western Conference wildcard race?
Yeah, well, to me, guys, it's still – this is just so hard to pick with St. Louis, right? Because, who's in that mix as well? Colorado, that's a team that's going to be in the mix by the end of this. Kraken, who are they right now? They're actually picking up a little bit of steam there. I think Utah is still lurking and better than they've shown. So I don't think that this Blues team is on the cusp of looking at anything but a wild card spot for the playoffs. But even if they were to grab one of those, I still think it's a step in the right direction. If the Blues make the playoffs, that is a big win on the season. It's just who's going to fall off out of that group ahead of them. Can Vancouver keep it up? I'm not – Vancouver grinds, man. But I'm not sure when the chips are down, that's the team that's going to be there at the end. I know it might be crazy. They only got 7 regulation losses, but I think that's a team the Blues can catch. I don't know about Edmonton, Colorado. I don't think so. But Vancouver, you look how they stacked up against Calgary last night, guys. Tell me that they can't take Calgary. I think they can.
Agreed.
So I think the Blues, once again, are going to be in the mix to the very end. I think they have a very legitimate chance at making the Stanley Cup playoffs. I wouldn't guarantee it. I wouldn't bet on it because I also don't gamble. But I think that they could be there. They're still, in my eyes, a couple players away from being true contenders. But where they've been and what they're doing with the rebuild, I'd be very happy with their pace right now, especially with Monty behind the bench and having a 5-year contract.
Just as a follow-up on that, Mike, it feels like to me that the third place spot in the Central Division might be available now because with Dallas's injuries that keep popping up, Sagan's out for the rest of the year. They've traded a lot of their chips in terms of star players. If that third place spot opens up, personally, I feel like the Blues might have the upper hand on Colorado because Colorado doesn't have any goaltending.
Yeah, well, you know who does have goaltending? Those Dallas. So that's the thing. Ottinger is your wild card there. As a family and as a goalie dad at this point now, my daughter and I don't miss a Blues Dallas game because it's so fun to watch. Whether it's Hofer or Bennington against Ottinger, that's goalie. That's really exciting stuff for goalies. But Colorado's crazy because a year and a half ago, everybody thought Georgiev was going to be the answer there. And I've never been a real believer because he's such a streaky goaltender. It's just, they have so many weapons in Colorado. And they've been able to outplay their goaltending for so long that I still feel like they're going to be able to find that. And maybe it takes more of a trade. They already did it once. Maybe it's going to take another. But I think that Colorado team can still outplay their goaltending because we're still not quite at Christmas. I think it's possible there.
All right, final thing for Mike McKenna. He joins us each and every week here on BK and Ferrario on behalf of Macadoodles, a place that I was able to get to last week prior to Thanksgiving for all of our needs for the family. We got some good wine, Alex. We got some red and some whites. We ended up getting a few different things of beer, and Mike hooked me up with a nice bottle of whiskey as well that I was able to take. We also had the opportunity to meet Jim Cook, Brady's dad, who was out there. It wasn't working. He went out there, of course, to get his drinks for the holiday as well. So it was a good time to be able to catch up with Brady Cook's dad. It's like family over there at Macadoodles. Mike, what do you guys have going on out there this weekend?
We're kind of in that territory after Thanksgiving, but we're starting to rev up towards Christmas. So we're bringing in all the nice Cabernets. We're also bringing in more and more of the featured whiskeys. We actually got a pretty big shipment this week of some of the allocateds from Elijah Craig. We have moved through all of those, but I have more coming in this week. I'll have Barrel King coming into the building. I'm also going to have some stuff from Doc Holliday and some stuff from Penelope and you name it. So basically what I'm saying is we're getting in all the good stuff over the next month here, and I'm going to be slowly dripping it out, but we're also beefing up our selection in your everyday bourbons and whiskeys, and we've also lowered pricing across the board, and that's what people are going to love to hear. I love to hear it because I see more people in the building now. Our pricing is as competitive as it gets. I'll take the L. We weren't competitive at the start for reasons I can't even describe, fellas, but I'll tell you what we're at right now, we'll put our pricing up against anybody, and you'll get customer service in Macadoodles like you won't anywhere else. We have dedicated whiskey nerds, man, that would love to talk mash bills with you. So come on in, come see Kat in the wine room. She does an amazing job. Cindy over in our wine as well. Tastings every day. We've got them for you. Wine, we've got in the spirits market.
Ooh, they're getting Barrel King. Woo! boy, that's a big one. That's a big one, Mike. You guys should be selling that one big time. That's a nice opportunity there. If you're a fan of whiskeys, pay attention to what they're doing over there at Macadoodles. Hey, Mike, appreciate the time as always, man. We'll talk with you again next week. Enjoy the weekend, my friend.
Sounds good. I will talk to you then. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Absolutely. That's Mike McKenna joining us as he does each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario. The stuff that Barrel King's doing right now, it's out of Bourbon, Missouri. It's
fitting.
Genuinely unbelievable. So
I need to go check out Bourbon, Missouri.
I mean, it's worth the trip. It's a little bit on the pricier side.
I'll
of
head
things,
Macadoodles.
It's amazing. All right, so Jacob Trouba has officially been traded by the New York Rangers. He's going to Anaheim. Who's this cat they got back?
This is the guy that Boston traded for Hampus Lindholm. He was a former first-round draft pick, but has not been very good for Anaheim. Can I go on a little bit of a rant here for a minute?
Yeah, you got 60 seconds.
60 seconds before we drop? Okay. The ineptness of the general manager for the New York Rangers is baffling to me. Chris Drury was a really good player. How can you screw up an organization as bad as they have? Like, he's the one that traded Pavel Buchnevich away, which, look, I understand. You had to get rid of him. You probably couldn't have afforded him. But you traded him for a draft pick and Sammy Blais, which then you traded back to the Blues. Jacob Trouba has not been a great player for them. But Jacob Trouba, 2 years ago, won a leadership award with the New York Rangers, and then all of a sudden he just stops playing hockey. And you needed to get rid of him. Sure, $8 million off the book. I don't know if Anaheim ate any money or if it's just straight or New York ate any money or if it's straight salary relief. But you traded a guy who was playing in your top four and a leader on your team 2 years ago for a defenseman who is probably not even going to crack your starting lineup, and you got a draft pick, which I would imagine isn't going to be much. I don't understand how some of the general managers operate, but this one is just wild to me.
Yeah, Trouba was playing 20 minutes a night for them this year. And sometimes, like, addition by subtraction. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they probably got worse in this trade.
Totally got worse.
It feels unlikely that they're going to get better based upon this deal.
It was a fourth-round pick that they got. So basically they got rid of money, which, cool. Now you can sign Shesterkin. You know what else you can't do? Bring in other players when you pay your goaltender $13 million.
But in that scenario, why not just wait until the offseason?
I don't know, dude.
I guess you got to mix it up.
You got to try and get rid of it now. But, like, again, and they're also, at least reportedly, actively trying to trade Chris Kreider, who scored 50 goals for him a couple of years ago. This was a team that had Stanley Cup aspirations. In a matter of, like, 2 or 3 years, they have fallen to the point where I don't know if they're going to be a playoff team in a couple of years.
Hockey's weird. These teams, the way they operate, it's very strange. People fall in and out of love very quickly in the NHL. It's becoming like basketball in that way. Like, the NBA and the NHL have a lot more in common than what I think the fans of those respective sports would like to believe.
Think about this for a minute. The Ducks just traded a fourth-round pick so that they can eat some or the Ducks just received a fourth-round pick so that they can eat $8 million for this year and next year, which, like, they had $19 million in cap space. They got a fourth-round draft pick for that. And they also got a better defenseman who plays in their top four for a dude who was barely playing in their top six. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Speaking of teams that are not well operated, did you see what Jake Wallman's done this year? It's been excellent for the San Jose Sharks. The Detroit Red Wings sent a second-round pick with him to remove that contract from their books.
And let's also look at this. This goes into the point of, like,
we trust Yzerman.
This is the Yzer plan.
He's been a disaster there.
Yeah, he has. This goes into the conversation of, like, players need to have a different opportunity. That Liljegren from the Toronto Maple Leafs, they basically sent him out for a third-round draft pick. He's been, like, a top four defenseman for the San Jose Sharks as well.
Well, a lot of people would be.
There's a lot of bad trades taking place right now in the National Hockey League.
And the Blues have been on the receiving end of some of those that have worked out well for them. Speaking of the Rangers, Pavel Buchnevich worked out
for Sammy Blais. When you got Sammy Blais back, and he scored like 16 goals in 30 games.
Yeah, they got nothing in that deal.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Our NFL Weekend Look Ahead coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, the Blues took on the Calgary Flames and came away with a 3-2 overtime win. They are back in action tomorrow night in Edmonton. Pre-game show starts at 8 o'clock, and then puck drop follows right after at 9. As for college football, we'll have the Mountain West Championship tonight at 6:30, as well as the Big 12 and SEC Championships tomorrow starting at 11. And to top it off on Sunday, we've got an NFL tripleheader kicking off at 11. You can hear all of that action right here on 101 ESPN. I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
More Blues talk, more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
All right, let's dive into our NFL weekend look ahead. We do this each Friday. We look ahead to the NFL Sunday slate. What is available for us to watch this weekend? The game of the week, the upset of the week, the overreaction game of the week. Let's start with the game of the week. If you could only sit down and watch one on Sunday, Alex, what's your number one game you're looking
None
for?
of them, BK. None of them. I'd like to opt out of this week, please.
It's not a good slate.
It's really not. I mean, honestly, Chargers-Chiefs, probably.
The best game this week was last night.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like the Bills and Rams are probably another one. But for me, I'm going to sit down because, of course, the Chiefs are bigger than the Cardinals here in St. Louis.
As we know.
I'm going to sit down on Sunday night and watch Chiefs and Chargers because at least that's a competitive two playoff caliber teams going head-to-head.
It's also a potential game where we find out, like, are the Chiefs actually a total fraud, and they're going to become like the 2022 Vikings. Remember that team that started out really hot and then lost to the Giants in the postseason? There's a lot of similarities, like if you just look at point differential and record at this point in the season between that Vikings team and this Chiefs team. So we'll find out pretty quickly there. T-Bone, what's your game of the week?
Yeah, I don't feel good about saying this. I'm not going to lie, because you guys are right. Slate's not great. But I'm going to go with an NFC West battle, and I'm going to go Seahawks at the Cardinals. Look, I don't know how good both those teams are. I do think it's going to be fun. The last time they played, it was kind of a slugfest. Hey, now that these teams just saw each other, I think it's 2 weeks ago, yeah, they've got a good idea. I think the offense are going to be able to scout things out better. I can see where this one ends up becoming a shootout. I don't trust either team. I wouldn't want to pick this game if I had to do a pick 'em at all this year.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah. I do think, though, it has the potential to be the best game of the weekend slate.
All right, so you mentioned Bills-Rams. That's another one that I would have on this list. The other two are the two games that you guys selected. The last game that I think is worth any of your time on Sunday is the Falcons versus the Vikings. The Vikings are a 5.5-point favorite. That feels like a lot to me. I don't really trust either of these two teams. I think they're pretty similar, honestly, in terms of my amount of trust that I have for them. So that would be the other game that I'm curious about. Vikings have an interesting defense. Falcons have all of the talent in the world offensively. Kirk Cousins against that pass rush is a little scary. That's the other game that I would be interested in. All right, Alex, upset of the week. We do this each week. What is your upset pick going into the week?
Mine's the Bears. I think
Me too, brother.
Here's the thing. DJ Moore's not playing. DeAndre Swift's not playing. Little concerning on that one, but I'm with you. I think the 49ers have officially given up. And if you're Chicago, the Matt Eberflus era is over, and the new coach bump takes place in this one. We've seen it take place with Seattle. The New Orleans Saints. Seen it take place in a couple of other instances in the NFL. I'm going to say Chicago. What is it, a 4-point spread? I think Chicago wins that and covers.
That's also my upset this week if I was going to go elsewhere. T-Bone picked the Bills to cover the spread this weekend against the Rams. Not so fast, my friend. I think the Rams actually might pull off the upset on that one at home. The Bills came off their bye, had a huge game against the 49ers. Before their bye, they had that huge game against the Chiefs as well. Next week, a massive game on the road against the Lions. Feels like a potential trap game here on the road at L.A. So I would go with that as my other potential upset pick this weekend.
Yeah,
T-Bone?
well, my upset pick, and I would say this to the Chiefs fan to my right, not so fast, my friend. I think the Chiefs are going to be upset this week, and I think they're going to lose to the Chargers, and I think it's going to be close. But I've lost confidence in this Chiefs team. And I'm typically the one that would say with Mahomes and Brady, hey, never bet against them. I'm kind of getting away from that because the Chiefs have a lot of problems.
All right, last thing here. Overreaction game of the weekend. I think it's the one that T-Bone just said.
I was just going to say.
Either direction. If the Chiefs win this one and take care of business, Monday morning, you will start hearing, okay, Chiefs were just kind of going through their sleepwalk portion of the season. They're going to get this thing righted the same way that they have over the last couple of seasons. They're going to be fine. If they lose, people are going to be freaking out on Monday, and it's going to be official panic mode for Chiefs fans and for the national media of, this team was always a fraud, and now we're starting to see them get exposed by the quality teams on their schedule.
My overreaction is that Panthers-Eagles game. I don't think the Panthers win this. I think the Panthers keep it close. And I think there's the overreaction. Like, this team can't be good. They barely beat Carolina. And I still think Philadelphia is going to be one of the second-best team in the NFC, regardless of the outcome. I have a sneaky suspicion. What was it, a 13-point spread? I have a sneaky suspicion Carolina keeps at a 7-point game.
You should have picked that. I like that.
And
I'm not that bold.
and to that point, you'll start to hear the real conversation of Bryce Young, right? We've talked about it of late.
And I say that's overreaction, too.
Yeah, he looks good. But then you look at the teams, it's like, okay, the Chiefs secondary is not very good. I think Tampa Bay was the last one. Their secondary is not very good. Philly, you do that against Philadelphia, now we can have a conversation. But I agree with BK. I think where the most overreaction will come is from that Chiefs-Chargers game. I'd be shocked if the Chiefs blew them out, but if they do, then you're right. People will say, okay, they're done with their sleepwalking phase. If they lose, that's when all of the conversations will really shift to their frauds, and especially if you see Buffalo take care of business in L.A.
And coming up, they've got 3 games in 10 days. That's one of the most difficult stretches that any team has on the schedule this year. At Cleveland, which is not a great team, but they do some things that can give the Chiefs trouble, especially with that pass rush. This is the first week we're going to see DJ Humphries at left tackle, and then they have a home game against Houston, on the road at Pittsburgh, on the road at Denver to finish things out. 3 of those games taking place in a 10-day stretch. It's not an easy close to the season for the Chiefs this year. Coming up next, we're in the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN.
to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Let's run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Hey, Blues fans, enter the Verizon Discover NHL Classic Sweepstakes. It is your chance to see the St. Louis Blues take on the Chicago Blackhawks on New Year's Eve in the Discover NHL Winter Classic in Chicago. One winner will receive 4 tickets to the game, plus a $3,000 gift card. Visit select St. Louis area Verizon locations or go to 101ESPN.com and enter to win by December 18th. No purchase necessary. Must be a legal U.S. resident of Missouri or Illinois. Age 18 or older. Get full details right now at 101ESPN.com. By the way, Alex Ferrario is going to be available on Sunday from 1 to 3 o'clock at the location located on Olive Boulevard in Creve Coeur. You can meet up with Alex 1 to 3 o'clock on Sunday at Olive Boulevard.
I'll be a spring chicken, too, after a 9 o'clock puck drop Saturday night, so come on out.
That's 1 o'clock. You'll be good by then.
Yeah, somebody messaged me and they said, ooh, is Alex going to have his headphones on? Probably. So just tap me on the shoulder when you want to say hi.
So go hang out with Alex Ferrario on Sunday at the Verizon in Creve Coeur. All right, time to hit the BK and Ferrario Rewind. It's going to be a brief one here today. If you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Siren Auto Centers.
Alex, Blues get a win last night. They are taking on the Edmonton Oilers tomorrow, trying to keep this streak going of points in 5 consecutive games under Jim Montgomery. What are you going to be watching for tomorrow against Edmonton?
The correction to where they were last night in terms of your own end. Mike said it right. You know, there were some turnovers in your own end. You have to tighten up defensively, especially against this team that will make you pay if you make those mistakes. But this is a massive one for St. Louis because these are those 4-point swing games. They've got 5 straight of them that started last night, meaning that when you win this, it's a 4-point swing in your direction because you'd be tied with Edmonton for that bottom wild card spot. So this one in Vancouver on Tuesday are going to be massive for St. Louis.
Yeah, it looks like St. Louis Cardinals, by the way, according to The Athletic's Katie Wu, they are not planning to trade Ryan Helsley. We said that yesterday. It's been updated once again today by Katie Wu. They are expecting to be a real contender. Not like a World Series contender, but they're trying to be.
They're an NL Central contender.
They're trying to be competitive again next year. That full piece is available for you over at The Athletic. Our full thoughts on that are available for you over at the podcast page after the show today. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We're broadcasting live today at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. Jordan Deacon did a fantastic job for us back in the studio with all the updates for you guys as well. You all have a fantastic weekend. We will talk to you on Monday at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next right here on 101 ESPN.